The story begins with the protagonist losing his grandfather, who raised him after he lost both his parents. Lying on his bed, he realized that he was all alone in this world. It felt like the funeral had only finished a few hours ago, but somehow, a whole 10 days had passed by in a daze. He had a message about the selection results, and apparently it was negative. He started recalling what people had been saying to him about his student loans. They told him to be grateful for those because without them, he wouldn't even be able to consider going to university. They advised him to focus on getting a job first rather than pursuing a career. They said his girlfriend was going to dump him if he had no job. His mind was distracted thanks to his cat, Nike. He felt comforted that at least she was with him. There was no point sulking about this now. He decided to eat something and then go back to job hunting. He then saw the wooden box his grandfather had left him and opened it. There were some old rings inside the box. He tried one, and Nike put another one in his mouth. He tried to have her drop the ring, but the moment he touched it, he opened his eyes to a new world. He wondered if this was a dream. He had no idea where he was or how he ended up here. Thinking back, he was lying on his bed a minute ago, but he didn't feel any hungrier or more tired than he was, so not much time could have passed. Before they ended up here, he tried to find something that was out of the ordinary. He then remembered that he was wearing the ring. He tried to find it, but it was not on his finger or in his pockets. He even checked Nike's mouth but couldn't find it. He was sure that it was on his finger, and there was no way it had fallen off that easily. He had no idea what was going on right now, but he wondered if the ring's disappearance had something to do with this situation. He thought about the possibility of the ring triggering all this, but this wasn't some anime or manga, he thought. He then realized that this really might be another world. He noticed that he wasn't wearing any shoes either. He believed that he would have some sort of cheating ability if this were really another world. He screamed open, but nothing happened. He sat there thinking he was screwed. Nike started licking his face, and when he looked at her, Nike was flying. He realized that it was she who got the cheat abilities. He gave up because there was no way he could survive here. But when he thought about it again, if Nike had some abilities, then there might still be hope. All he needed to do was try to figure out what they were. A screen appeared in front of him, and he assumed it was Nike's status screen, but it was actually his. He had two unique skills called trading and appraisal. He started to feel hope again now that he had cheating skills. He wasn't sure what the trader did, but the appraisal was classic. He used appraisal on Nike, and she seemed much stronger than he was. Still, it was super fortunate that they both managed to get cheat abilities. And it wasn't like he had anything or anyone to go back to Japan for either. So he decided to work together with Nike and find a way to survive this world. In which case, he would just need to get to work on his appraisal skills. He went to the forest and used appraisal skill on a tree. It was a medicinal leaf tree, pretty standard stuff. He then used trader skill and the tree disappeared. He felt a pain in his head and Nike was startled too. He put her down and apologized. He tried the trader skill once again and another tree disappeared. Nike looked confused. When he used the trader skill again, the tree reappeared. Now it was time to really put this skill to the test. He put the stored tree there and traded for points. After that, he made a shoe for himself. This was amazing because he had hit the jackpot with this skill. This means he had found a way to survive, and if he did this right, he would make an absolute fortune. He could see a bright future ahead of him now. That gave him a burst of motivation. He started stocking trees and rocks and anything he could find. He had stored tons of stuff already, but it didn't seem anywhere near full yet. He went and bought an electric chainsaw to test out too. Come to think of it, he was starving, so he decided to look for something to eat. Nike suddenly started hissing at something, and when he checked it, it was a black tiger. Brown bears were cute in comparison to this. He tried to store the tiger, but it didn't work. When he stored the trees, it didn't allow him to store the insects along with them. He wasn't sure, but it seemed that he couldn't store any living creatures other than plants. He started to think of something to do. He had an idea. He needed to strike first and not give it a chance to fight back. Tiger was still a distance away, so he tried to calm himself down to do this. Regardless of the size of the target, the maximum range for storage was 100 m, which was also the same maximum distance for summoning objects then too. He confirmed all of this when he was testing out his trader skill earlier. He told Nike not to worry. First, he stored the ground the tiger was stepping on and made him fall. While it was falling, he put a shipping container and placed liquid nitrogen. Everything went just like he planned. He asked Nike how his plan was, but she was still hissing. He heard the tiger again and it jumped out of the container alive and healthy. He realized that he needed a weapon to fight with. He didn't need that though, because Nike started throwing water bullets at the tiger. This was Nike's spirit magic, but now the tiger was running faster than before. He checked if he had something and decided to make something to act as a wall. But then I realized that there was no escape. If he didn't fight now, it would all end here. When the tiger started running again, he realized that it was moving in slow motion. He realized that he might be surprisingly calm. When he arranged the timing, he dropped a huge rock on the tiger right before it got him. He believed he did it this time and confirmed when the tiger went right into his storage. He was so hungry now, he destroyed the evidence, purchased food and weapons after eating. He also had a drone. This trader's skill was way too OP. He checked the surroundings and found a carriage with people. It was time for him and Nike's first contact with the people in this world. When he finally caught up to them, he greeted them nicely. The person at the front asked if he was traveling alone. He showed them Nike and said it was just one man and his pet. The girl seemed interested in the cat. He asked if cats were quite rare around here. She said she often saw cats here, but she had never seen one with such long fur before. He said he was Daichi Asakara, and this was his partner Nike. The girl took out her robe and said she was Alicia Heartland. He was so beautiful that Daichi stared at her for a moment. He asked if she would like to stroke her, and she seemed pretty excited. But when she approached him to pet Nike, the other woman put her sword between them and told Alicia that she was being careless. She asked once again if he was alone. He said he was a traveling merchant. He thought this might be a suitable cover for him. She said he didn't seem to be carrying much for a traveling merchant. He said he was actually carrying quite a lot, believe it or not, and showed her the light he made. They seemed quite surprised. She assumed it was a magic bag or magic tools, but Alicia said she didn't sense any magic coming from the light shining tool he used. Daichi realized that there were really magic bags and magic tools in this world. Seeing as though his status screen had magic written there, it wasn't surprising to hear that. He said he was going to place the tool down here and they could try it themselves. Alicia checked the light and confirmed that it wasn't a magical tool. They found it incredible. He asked if they were traveling together. She said it was a caravan escort. He said he didn't suppose they would allow him to accompany them both to the next town and then introduce him to the person who was in charge. Alicia didn't think he was a bad person, so she was thinking about allowing him. But the other girl said he was very suspicious. Daichi wanted to give her his weapons to make her feel better, but she said there was no point in handing her his useless weapons because she could already tell by looking at his hands that he wasn't used to using a bow or a knife. Daichi let out a big laugh and said she got him there. She was shocked by his reaction and said she would introduce him to the caravan leader. Her name was Karina. Alicia said she would ask the caravan leader if he could travel with them. He thanked them and offered his hand for a handshake. Nike immediately jumped on Alicia and started purring her. She found him so cute that she completely ignored Daichi's hand. He decided to offer his hand to Karina, but she didn't shake his hand either. She said she would take him to meet the leader, but he must always be within 1 meter of her. She cannot carelessly afford to allow a magician to get close to the person she was supposed to be guarding after all. She didn't believe for 1 second he was traveling on his own with no real combat skills of note, so she concluded that he was a magician. She told him to remember the 1 meter rule and started walking to the carriage. Daichi noticed that she was using a longsword. She said he had changed his tone. He said this was his normal way of talking. They were about the same age, so he thought it should be okay. Karina told him to feel free to speak however he liked, and just don't make her wary with any sudden moves or anything like that. Daichi didn't know that he really looked suspicious to her. They opened the carriage and a man got off of it, asking if he was the one who wished to travel with them to Karam. He introduced himself to the man. The man's name was Klaus Mertram, leader of this caravan and the president of the Bertram Trading Company. He didn't know how influential this Bertram Trading Company was, but he was planning on going all out, so he said he was all too aware that this was an impertinent request. Klaus asked what he was planning to offer in return. He gave him a small bag and said he would sell him those goods at cost price. Klaus opened the bag and seemed shocked. He said he was being quite generous and asked if he didn't know the true value of this. Daichi responded that he didn't know the value of it within this country. Value depended on where and when the product was being sold. In his country, this was cultivated. However, it was still a valuable commodity, found him quite open and honest. He said he was but a humble merchant. He understood that lies and manipulation lead to ruining their game. Klaus seemed to like him. Klaus stated that this pepper may have a certain value in the country he was from. However, he could not assure that in this country, it would be worth many times more. No country on this entire continent had managed to successfully cultivate pepper. All of their pepper was imported from various other continents, which, of course, meant it was so expensive that only the wealthy could afford it. Also, to sell pepper within the city, a permit, and since he was a foreigner from a different continent, he expected he didn't have the required permit. Daichi started to freak out because he figured that he wasn't even from this continent. Klaus said he never imagined he would be from an entirely different continent, even though his beliefs and attire certainly do look foreign. Daichi asked him to keep the fact that he was from a different continent to himself. He said being from an entirely different continent may cause both of them unnecessary trouble. He said he appreciated his consideration in this matter. Klaus said he would prepare payment for the pepper now, but Daichi asked him to wait. He asked if he would be willing to pay him in something other than money. He wished to become a merchant in this country. However, as they had discussed, he wasn't a native of this country. He suggested providing him with the necessary knowledge and support to allow him to both survive in this country and thrive as a merchant. Klaus admitted that he was certainly quite the trusting kind. Daichi said he would like to think he had a good eye for people. Klaus said that for him to help him properly become a merchant, he was still a little short. Daichi asked how much more pepper he would need, and he said 3. He certainly seemed quite capable, and Daichi believed he would be quite the dependable ally. He gave him 3 more bags and said that his grandfather always said that when dealing with an important business partner, you should always go above and beyond their expectations, although he might just read that in a book somewhere. Klaus told Lloyd to collect the pepper. Klaus then asked Karina to escort Mr. Asakura to the town of Kamaru, as well as guard Miss Alicia. She accepted his request and asked Alicia if it was okay with her. She said yes, and they made a deal. When they returned to the carriage, Daichi offered his hand again and said he was looking forward to traveling with both of them. They were also looking forward to their journey, but did not shake his hand. Daichi asked where they were going, and Alicia said they were going to explain his situation. The captain of the guard, Karina's superior, would need to know. He asked them to call him Daichi because he wasn't good with formalities and would be even happier if they were just to treat him like a friend. Alicia wasn't sure at first, but when Daichi showed her Nike again, she seemed okay. Daichi suddenly said she was slipping from his hands and had Alicia hold her. She said Nike was so cute. Daichi approached her and said that the one she was hugging was Nike, and he was just Daichi. She was quite embarrassed, so she turned her back to him. He asked if they should head to meet the guard captain, and she could carry on holding her. She said yes, but he couldn't hear her, and approached her face again. She panicked and called him Mr. Daichi again, but then corrected herself. In the next scene, Klaus asked Lloyd about his thoughts on Daichi. He said that for someone who wasn't even from this continent, he seemed quite familiar with their ways, and he thinks pretty quickly on his feet and was very well-mannered. His hands were very well looked after, like they had never done any hard labor. He had, more than likely, received a good education and was raised in a wealthy family. Klaus agreed with what he said and asked what he made of this. He said that handing over something this valuable and not asking for anything tangible in return meant that he was either the son of some wealthy merchant or the foolish son of a noble who didn't understand how the world worked. He may become someone of great importance in the future, though. For it to be in such excellent condition, they figured it might be an item box. An item box was a very rare skill, even among he blessings of the gods. A skill holder could create and separate a subspace dimension used to store items. It had a few certain characteristics. The storage capacity depends totally on the magical power of the user. It could only be used by the user himself, and time did not flow in this subspace. On the other hand, a magical bag was literally a bag or pouch that had just been enchanted with magic. It uses magic to expand its storage capacity beyond its normal limits. However, time does not stand still, and the capacity was fixed regardless of the owner's magical power. Klaus said he pretended to take the pepper out of a magic bag, but it was clearly not the case. So that brazen confidence which allowed him to survive crossing the ocean came from having an item box. He was still quite young, though. Klaus believed there were probably more items of great value within that box. But most importantly, he knew a land completely unfamiliar to them. He asked if they should inform the necessary people, encourage them to treat him with the utmost courtesy, but Klaus said it wouldn't be necessary. But they should at least certainly make sure that he was not treated disrespectfully. Now it is just within the company, but guards too. While observing his surroundings, Daichi noticed that glass was quite valuable here, but the quality seemed to be somewhere around the level of the Middle Ages. A girl named Coletta came and asked Karina if she could help her with the fire. Karina apologized to her and said she was showing a guest around right now. Daichi wondered why she would ask that and thought it might be to start a fire with magic. Daichi said it wasn't a problem for him, and if it was okay, he wanted to watch too. Karina decided to help Coletta and used her magic to start the fire. Daichi was quite impressed. She just held her hand above the firewood, made it burst into flames. Nike's offensive magic was amazing too, but the magic used in daily life was super exciting. He asked if she always helped with starting fires, and she said only when her hands were free. He figured that people who couldn't use fire magic would use flint to start fires. Alicia said people who couldn't use fire magic could use other types of magic. So, in other words, you could use magic items no matter their elements as long as you had some magic powers. Alicia explained that it wasn't like that. Whether or not you could use magic changes what jobs you could do too. More often than not, magic users were hired over non-users. Non-users couldn't even make use of modern conveniences, let alone earn a living. He recalled what happened in Japan and felt bad for them. He said out loud that your life depends on whether you can use magic or not. Karina warned him because he said it right in front of Coletta, and she heard him. He immediately apologized to her. She said it was okay because she had gotten used to it. Besides, even though she couldn't use any magic, she was able to work for fine company. Everyone around her was kind and helped her with all sorts of stuff. She felt blessed. Daichi realized that rising in this world as a merchant with this cheat ability was a terribly selfish and shallow idea. With his ability, he could make the lives of those without magic abilities a little better, and stirring up the value system in this world sounded quite interesting. Using technology from Earth, people without magic could live a life no different from those with magic. By spreading the knowledge and technology of the Earth, those without magic would become their valued customers. He called Colette and showed her the lighter he had. He said that he had also got a tool for starting fires. When he lit the lighter, they were shocked. Karina had never seen such a small pyromancy item, but it was not a magic item. It was also transparent like a gem. He said it was called a lighter and told Colette to try it out. She panicked and said she could never lay her hands on such an expensive item. Daichi dropped the lighter on purpose and explained that it was more durable than it looked, and he wouldn't be mad at her if she broke one or two of these so she could use it without worry. She carefully used the lighter to burn a bush and started a fire pretty easily. She was amazed by the lighter and assumed his country must be a great place. He said that he wanted to spread tools throughout this country that even non-users of magic could use. Colette said he was a foreign merchant, and if he had such great products, then he would definitely succeed. She thanked him for the lighter and tried to give it back to him, but he said she could have the lighter in return for telling him a lot and as an apology for disturbing her work. She tried to stop him, saying there was no way she could accept such a valuable item. He told her that it wasn't worth that much. A man appeared, asking Karina what she was doing here. Karina said they were in the middle of meeting with the captain, who was him. Karina introduced the man as Captain Jeffrey. She told Captain Jeffrey that this was Asakura Daichi, the merchant Mr. Beltram was conducting business with. Daichi offered his hand again and said he would be accompanying them to the next town. Captain Jeffrey said he was in charge of escorting the Beltram Trading Company. Karina mentioned that the president of the company asked her to take care of the customer. Jeffrey asked if she was escorting both Daichi and Alicia, and she confirmed to him. Daichi felt like a kid because she sounded like she was babysitting them. She didn't need to say it like that, but it seemed that she did not care. After that, Captain Jeffrey guided him. At night, they gave him a tent, and he rested there with Nike. He didn't think they would be more impressed by the lighter's plastic case than by its function. He wondered if he overdid it a little. Someone came to his tent and asked if he was awake. It was Karina. She apologized for disturbing him this late and informed him that the president would like to speak with him. He said he would get ready right away. He took off his watch just in case. He wondered if it was a problem with the quality of the pepper. When he was walking to the president's tent with Karina, he noticed that it was awfully lively. Karina guided him to the tent and he entered. Alicia and Klaus were there waiting for him. Klaus apologized for the late hour. Daichi asked if there was a problem with the quality of the pepper. He said he would be happy to replace it if there were any issues at all. Klaus responded that the pepper was of excellent quality. Daichi asked what kind of matter it was, and he showed him the lighter he gave to Colette. Klaus stated that he did not take it away from her. He said he was asked about how to handle it, but he had never even heard of such an item. He said that he had no idea how much this item was actually worth. Daichi thought he would ask to buy it from him, but now it didn't feel like he could say he was planning to sell it as an everyday household item. Klaus assumed it was a product used regularly by nobility and the wealthy. It may be so in his home country, but in this country it had extraordinary value. Daichi asked if it would be its value as a tool. Klaus said as an item that even non-users of magic could use, it would be worth more than any ordinary magic item. But it was the case that mattered. It may not be as precious as jewels, but the case was worth as much as glass. If a decent amount of them appears on the market, there would be no doubt people would be trying to sell them to the rich and powerful at a high price. Daichi saw nothing but trouble coming from selling things like this without thinking. Daichi felt bad for his carelessness. Klaus stated that he promised to aid in his business and asked what they were going to do now. It seemed like pretending it never happened was out of the question. Besides, that wouldn't allow them to shake up this world's sense of values. Daichi took out something else and said it was a product to be sold to the wealthy. It was a glass sculpture. They were flabbergasted by the beauty of it that Klaus almost screamed. Hearing their conversation from outside, Karina appeared right behind Daichi with her sword to his throat. Klaus told Karina that there was no problem and that he simply lost his composure. After that, Karina excused herself. Klaus apologized for raising his voice so suddenly. Daichi was actually freaking out, wondering if he was more than a meter away because she was inside the tent in an instant. Klaus commented that he seemed unfazed by someone sticking a sword in his face. He said it was because he knew she would hold back, but in reality he just didn't realize what had happened, and they would never know this. Klaus wanted to continue their conversation, but before that, Daichi asked Karina to join them. When she came, she was already aware of the situation. Daichi explained that this was a glad sculpture. It was a high-value item that was traded at a value far beyond any inferior gems. Klaus would have never thought this was the same glass he knew. It was magnificent. Daichi then took out some glass items and lots of lighters. Klaus saw that the lighter's case was different from this glass. Even so, there would be people trying to sell the case for a high price. Daichi responded that it was also in his interest to acquire some capital, so he was considering making money through selling glass products. And then, he was planning to throw in a lighter as a freebie. First, he would offer a free lighter as an everyday tool to the customers who buy expensive glassware from him. Then, after its use had been spread among the wealthy and nobility, he was going to put the lighters on the market. It was hardly a brilliant plan, but there weren't any alternatives, so Klaus decided to go with it. Daichi asked if he was correct in assuming he would work with him. They shook hands, and this was Daichi's first step. After the talk, Karina apologized to Daichi for earlier. Alicia said it wasn't her fault. She said that the president and she were so shocked that they ended up shouting. Daichi said he was the one who startled them, and Karina was just doing her job, so he should apologize to them. They seemed a bit down, so Daichi gave Nike to Alicia, and as expected, she cheered up. When he asked Nike if she liked Alicia's happy face too, Nike meowed. Alicia smiled and asked how it was. Daichi approved and said her shy face was cute too. Daichi then commented that people had been looking at him funny. Karina said there was a rumor going around that he gave Colette a lighter, so everyone else wanted lighters too, and they had been speculating about who he really was too, saying that he was the heir of a wealthy merchant from a foreign country. Traveling to learn the trade was one of the tamer rumors. Some said he was a foreign nobleman, hiding his status to chase after his love, and others say he was an illegitimate child of a royal family who was being hunted down and ended up drifting there. They had a pretty good imagination in Daichi's eyes. Suddenly, a bunch of people came into panic, screaming that they couldn't shake off the monster. A group of king apes came. Karina told both of them not to leave her side. Captain Jeffrey ordered everyone to fall into a large beast interception formation. Daichi watched what happened and asked what king apes were. Karina explained that they were a type of large ape monster. They weren't intelligent enough to hunt in groups, but they were quick and packed quite a punch. He asked if she wasn't going to join the defensive line, but her current duty was to guard him and Alicia. He told her not to worry about him. He would be more comfortable if she focused on guarding Miss Alicia. Karina told him that she couldn't abandon her objective like that and let her do her job. She then said Alicia could use non-elemental magic too. She asked her not to forget the physical enhancement and enchanted gear. Daichi thought that if they both used the same system, the only thing left to enhance would be equipment. He wondered if he was able to do it. Apes came fast and there were lots of them. They couldn't dodge in midair. No matter how smart they were still monkeys after all. He thought it was already over with only archers attacking, but the arrows did nothing against them. They moved to the magic attacks. Everyone used their magic to stop them from attacking. Daichi asked if they were okay. Karina said they were and mentioned that they could hold off attacks of this level. But a dozen or so were coming from the forest in the south. They still had the upper hand, so Captain told them to push them back. They seemed quite reliable, but Daichi still thought about helping them out. He didn't want to show off his skills though. He told Nike to stay hidden and not use her magic this time. He started wondering what kind of weapon would be suitable, while Alicia looked at him puzzled. Karina said king apes weren't usually this riled up. She told Alicia to check if there were still king apes lurking in the forest in the south. Daichi noticed something and immediately told Karina that they were coming from the meadows to the east. They were so close and so fast. Daichi needed a weapon to protect himself. Karina started killing them, but they were too much and too strong for her to handle on her own. She couldn't stop all of them, so some rushed to Alicia. Daichi noticed this and used his body to attack. He even used his head out of adrenaline. Even Karina was shocked. He asked Alicia if she was okay when he saved her. She said she was, and then they decided that they needed to retreat. But the apes didn't stop. Daichi and Karina continued fighting together. Even the ape behind Alicia was shocked. Right before it got her, Daichi guarded her and started to push the ape. He was not going down that easily. He then realized that it didn't hurt at all. He figured that this was non-elemental magic. Their movement started to slow down in his eyes. He thought he had got the hang of it now and took out his knife. He stabbed the ape right behind its neck and defeated it. It felt like stabbing a cake with a fork. This physical enhancement was amazing. After killing it, he decided to back Karina up. He used enchanted gear and stabbed the ape again, but it was too shallow. A blade of this length should reach its heart. The ape turned its head and looked at him as if it was going to kill him. But before it could do that, Karina used her sword and defeated it. She was so cool that Daichi lost his balance and fell. Worried, they rushed to him, but he asked if they were okay. Karina told him that they should be asking him about that. Alicia scolded him. Daichi stood up and asked how the defensive line was holding. Karina said the enemies were thinning out. If they keep it up, they could drive them out. Daichi once again asked if they shouldn't back them up, but Karina repeated that her job was to keep them safe. She said that their plan to flank their defensive line had failed, and their morale shouldn't hold out much longer. Daichi wasn't sure if they were really that smart, but when he looked at the ones that were escaping, he realized that they were. Daichi concluded that Karina was much cuter without the blood splattering on her face. He took out a towel to clean his hands from the blood. Alicia asked him to give it to her, and she wet the towel. She started cleaning his face. Daichi said he could do it himself, but Alicia wanted to do this at least after he saved her. Daichi commented that she could use water spirit magic. Her reaction made him think that he had said something bad, but she was just surprised that he understood it quite well. Daichi didn't understand why she was surprised. She said that there were elemental magic and spirit magic. Both had 4 elements: water, fire, wind, and earth. While elemental magic users use their magic abilities to cast spells, spirit magic users only use their abilities as a key for activation, and must rely on nature to cast spells. In contrast to elemental magic users, who rely entirely on their own magical potential, spirit magic was more powerful and could be used more frequently. So there were 4 fundamental elements of magic, and spirit magic was basically stronger than elemental magic. Alicia asked how he knew she was using spirit magic. He panicked and said he was just being polite. He said where he was from, spirit magic was ranked higher than elemental magic, and when you met someone for the first time, it was impolite to assume they had the lower-ranked elemental magic. So it was more polite to treat them as spirit magic users. They didn't seem to believe him, though. Karina stated that only 20 people in this country could use spirit magic, never more than 100 in the entire continent. He said there were fewer where he was from, too, but he didn't think there were that few. Alicia said it might have been good to learn some common knowledge about this country before he became a merchant here. Daichi asked if she could teach him along the way, and she immediately accepted. As thanks, the second he made it big as a merchant, he promised to enshrine his shop with a statue of the 2 of them. It looked like the battle was over. Daichi asked if they should go meet them, and Karina suggested they could help tend to the wounded. Daichi asked why the king apes were chasing them. Karina had a rough idea, but they would have to ask those guys over there. Daichi was still thinking about spirit magic. When Nike used spirit, he would just call it his elemental magic. Also, besides his trade skill, if his appraisal skill got exposed too, it would be quite troublesome. It was probably the skill he should be the most careful with. Having so many skills was harder than he thought. It was not easy to survive, even with cheating skills. That night, Alicia kept thinking about the time when Daichi saved her. He was smiling, but that was the first time she had seen someone kicking a king ape like that without a weapon either. And she had no idea why he put himself in danger by standing in the middle of the ape and her. And why was he smiling? Magic equipment that withstands even a blow from a king ape without so much as a scratch was impossible. It was like in those fairy tales her grandmother went on about when she was little. She tried not to romanticize Daichi, but if he were some kind of knight in shining armor, then he wouldn't be afraid of her. His attitude towards her didn't change at all, even when he found out she could use spirit magic. The next day, Karina was absolutely shocked that Daichi couldn't ride a horse. She corrected her that he didn't say he couldn't ride a horse, just that he had never ridden one before. She had to put him in front of them. He was very uncomfortable, but this was one of the highest quality coaches available. He looked at the ones who were riding the horses and noticed that they were staring at him. He asked if they didn't know that he was a guest of honor. She said it was made known last night. She asked if no one came to talk out of curiosity during breakfast, and he said yes. They were told to keep quiet about the lighter, but that was not the only reason. He asked if he had messed up something else. Karina said it was his tent. Korean scolded him for his reaction and told him that some strange light was leaking out of his tent too. He said that was perfectly normal where he was from. Karina told him to do her a favor and consult her before he went around showing his products to everyone. He promised to do that. Alicia then asked him to show what kind of tool it was. She had been wondering since last night. Daichi said she could have stopped by his tent if she wanted to see it. She panicked because visiting a man's tent at night was too inappropriate. Daichi felt like he was in a rom-com. Daichi asked her to excuse him because that was not something he should have said to a young maiden. Karina warned him that this was a rude thing to say to a woman, because Alicia was 20 years old. Daichi was shocked. Karina was 19 years old, which meant that they were both older than him. Daichi told her that he was actually 22. Karina thought he was joking, and Alicia didn't even believe him. Daichi said he wasn't lying and felt so bad that they thought he was a teenager. He said he had also gotten Alicia's age wrong, so they were even. Daichi saw the guys they were holding, and Karina told him not to sympathize with them. Allegedly, they were part of the party of 35 who went into the forest to catch baby king apes. It was a large-scale operation, but only 5 of them escaped with their lives. Daichi asked what they were doing with the baby apes. Alicia said they tamed them and used them for labor in the military. And of course, they were fitted with slave collars. Babies under 2 months old go for 20 gold coins, and those under 6 months old go for 10 on the market. Daichi asked if they had committed a crime. Karina said they did bring back a pack of king apes, so there was that. At least they were held liable for last night's battle. It was more like disruptive behavior. He asked what would happen if they didn't pay, and Karina responded that indentured servitude. When he said adventuring didn't pay, Karina reminded him that she was an adventurer. She said that as long as you are careful about it, it wasn't a bad job at all. They were unlucky this time with the 2 packs. Whatever happened, they didn't do enough investigation. They didn't even go looking for any survivors to prevent further deaths. This was a harsh world. Moving on, they continued to teach Daichi the common sense in this world. Approaching a woman whilst using physical enhancements would be considered rude. The culture and civilization of this country were very different from his. Alicia patted his head and said he was doing a great job. Daichi wanted to take a break and took out lots of snacks from his bag. He said it was food from his homeland. He wanted to know what their thoughts were. Karina asked if that was the magic bag he got from the guild leader to disguise his item box. He said it was coming from the item box, so that's why it was so fresh. Before they dug in, they saw the Takura village. It looked like they didn't have time for an early lunch. Now he knew this water bottle and this see-through sandwich wrapper shouldn't be seen by just anyone, so he put them back. Karen was relieved. Daichi realized that they were taking an hour off anyway, so he suggested the 3 of them stroll around the village outskirts. Alicia found this idea splendid. Karina suggested walking around inside the village after eating on the coach, but she would also go and scout it out first. It was a big village, so she thought it would be more fun for him to see a different culture, rather than just the fauna and flora. Also, there was a store that sells shoes and clothes. Daichi noticed that he would stand out looking like this, so he agreed to go with Karina's idea. Karina thanked them because when the people she was tasked to protect were this straightforward, she loved it. Daichi was so amazed by her beauty and aura that his voice trembled when he asked how long she would be gone for. She said it would take 15 to 20 minutes. He said he would be waiting patiently in the coach with Alicia then. After Karina left, Nike started playing with Alicia. She started to move her hands to let her catch it, but Nike was a smart cat. She caught her finger immediately. Alicia decided to speed it up a little, and Nike went crazy over this game. It wasn't only Nike, but even Alicia's enhancing herself physically amazed Daichi. Alicia figured out that Nike could use physical enhancement too. Daichi asked if she could keep it between the 2 of them. Alicia seemed surprised, and she blushed while agreeing to keep it a secret. There was a weird romantic moment in there until Karina showed up. Karina informed the 2 that they were going to spend 2 full days in this village. Daichi asked if something had happened, and she said they sustained more damage than they thought from last night's encounter with the king ape, so they had decided to rest in this village as much as possible. Daichi asked if they were going to move the coaches. She said they were standing by until the lodging was figured out. They had some free time, which meant they could eat some lunch. Karina seemed quite eager to eat it, so Daichi asked if she was craving that sandwich, and she said yes. They were both interested in those unusual foods. Daichi told him to just bite into it like bread. Karina made the first bite, and she was amazed by it. Alicia also found it delicious. Daichi told them to eat as much as they wanted. He even had some fruits and sweets. Nike started meowing, so he gave some for her too. Karina was absolutely moved by the sweet sandwich. Daichi said it was called whipped cream and it was especially popular among girls. She totally got it because it was so delicious. He asked if she would like some more. She did, but wondered if it would be okay. He said she had helped him a lot, so there were plenty of other dishes that used whipped cream for her to try when she got the chance. Karina's whole attitude changed, as if she needed those sweets her whole life. He was so happy to see them enjoying the food. Karina asked if they weren't too expensive. He asked if he seemed like a guy who would care about the price. In the next scene, Karina informed Klaus that Daichi drop-kicked a king ape. He faced off against 5 of the king apes that ambushed them. Klaus said her attention might have been diverted away from him, and she may have been mistaken, but she stated that she would never let her focus wander from her client during battle. He knew she was right. He knew she could use wind magic to sense movement outside her field of view. Karina finished giving the details regarding the battle last night. So, a level of physical enhancement she wasn't even aware of, and an enchanted gear that could withstand the bite of a king ape. Karina said he was using a knife so he couldn't finish them off, but if he had a longsword, he could have easily taken down those 4. If that was true, at the very least, he couldn't name anyone on this continent who could match him in non-elemental magic. Klaus asked how it looked. Karina stated that despite his non-elemental magic ability, she didn't sense any real combat experience. He was a novice in swordsmanship and martial arts to say the least, so he was only skilled in non-elemental magic. She wasn't certain. Klaus said he was a complete amateur merchant too. Although he must have been close to skilled merchants, he certainly had knowledge close to practical experience. Karina wondered if he could be a nobility from another continent. That may indeed be the case. Klaus said that unless they assume he was the sheltered son of some noble, his lack of caution made no sense. Karina asked how they should proceed with Daichi. Karina too wished to keep the fact that he was a visitor from another continent a secret, so Klaus told her to ensure it stayed strictly confidential. He remained an important person to their company. Lord Asakura not only saved Alicia and their lives, but also did a great service for this company. She told her to remain as a guard for him, and until they reached the town of Karam, he would like her to provide him with enough knowledge to prevent anyone from suspecting his origins or taking advantage of him. His strength was just like it was from a fairy tale. After that, Karina went back to where Alicia and Daichi were. Daichi tried on some new clothes and asked for their opinion. They didn't seem to like it. Alicia said that since they were both so used to seeing him in his foreign clothes, both her and Karina's opinions may not have been of much help to him. Whether it suited him or not was irrelevant at this point. He suggested something discreet yet stylish. Karina told him that he wouldn't look like a traveler if it were stylish, and he would stand out. Daichi started to miss Happy Karina from lunchtime. They gave him different clothes and told the lady that he was going to take those. The woman asked him not to flatter her because she was an old lady. Daichi continued to fake flirt with her and said she had to be only 4 or 5 years older than him. The woman said she had a daughter around his age. He said he bet he would mistake her and her daughter for sisters standing side by side. After that sweet talk, Daichi asked if he could pay with something else instead of coins and took out a silver coin. Karina panicked and immediately tried to distract the woman, saying he would pay for it. She then dragged him out of the store. She said he did that on purpose, but Daichi thought they usually pay for silver. She said she didn't mean it like that. Daichi wanted to go to the next shop. Karina stopped him and said they were going to the guild leader first. In the next scene, Klaus asked Daichi what he was trying to do. He said he was trying to pay for the clothes. Klaus showed the silver ingot and asked if he did it with this. He said he hadn't seen the silver coins they used around here, but where he was from, it wasn't that unusual to pay with silver ingots. Klaus seemed surprised that he hadn't seen any silver coins since he set foot on this continent. He said that if he needed water or food, he would get it from his item box, so he didn't need to use money until now. Klaus said he understood it and assumed he should have realized that Lord Asakura wouldn't have any cash on hand. He said he should have known that too. He asked if he would like to buy something from him since he needed some cash. Klaus seemed troubled. He wanted to be on good terms with him even after they arrived at the town of Karam, so he decided to indulge him. If only he had assumed he had common sense, given where he was from was completely absurd in this country, and he wished he wouldn't recklessly expose his products to everyone, no matter how worthless they were in his homeland. Daichi asked Karina if she was still angry. Karina responded that she wasn't angry to begin with, but it was obvious that she was angry. Daichi told them that he had reflected on his actions, but Karina ignored him when she saw Nike. She told Nike that she wasn't angry at her and that it was all her master's fault. Daichi gave them some candies as an apology. Karina was obviously excited to see them, but acted like she was unbothered. Daichi explained where he was from. If you caused trouble for your lover or a girl you were close to, then it was customary to give her chocolates as an apology. That wasn't true, but they didn't know that. If you could solve everything with chocolate, then nobody would have any problems. Alicia was surprised, and Karina said she had no choice. As expected, they loved everything. Daichi gave them some more. He was genuinely worried that they were so easily convinced like that. He said he really felt sorry about what happened. Karina told him to just be more mindful of it from now on. He promised to do that. Daichi then noticed that there were a lot of adventurers here. Given the size of the village, Alicia agreed with him. Karina agreed too, and she said they weren't mannered either. He thought it was his imagination, but he had been sensing some hostile gazes for a while now. Alicia was worried because Daichi wasn't properly armed right now. And also, the rumor that he was a guest of the Beltram Company had probably already spread. A wealthy foreigner who looked weak and unprepared seemed like an easy score for any evil actors. Daichi asked if they should ask about the situation at the weapon shop. Karina responded that they wouldn't want to cause trouble in the village, so she told him to be cautious and not go around sticking his neck out. Daichi told her to trust him. He may not look like one, but he was a pacifist at heart. She just hoped he didn't gain some weird self-confidence from the king ape battle. Daichi then wondered who would be stronger, those adventurers or a king ape. They seemed pretty shocked, so he said he was just asking as a point of reference. Alicia wasn't sure, but she said if it was just on one, the king apes were probably stronger. However, the adventurers could work together, lay traps, and strategize. Daichi then decided to avoid getting caught up with those adventurers. He wanted to get some equipment right away. They wanted to start with his appearance. They went to the weapon shop, and he tried various weapons. He wore armor first and asked if they wanted something like this. Karina thought it might be a little too light. He also picked one for Nike, and Alicia seemed impressed by his thoughtfulness. Karina saw that it was an enchanted gear, so he approved. They picked up the armor and then moved to the shield. He picked out a big one, but it didn't go well with his armor. It was like walking around showing everyone he could use physical enhancements. Daichi wouldn't stand out if he just stored it in his item box though, so he bought that. Next was the weapon. As an avid fantasy RPG enjoyer, he wanted to go with a longsword. Karina asked if he could use a longsword. He said he had to look menacing, and he was sure he would manage if he just swung it around. Karina told him that it didn't work like that. Alicia was sure Daichi could manage somehow. Karina said he could, only cause of his absurd physical enhancement and enchanted gear. It was clear now that magic users were the ones who came out on top. Magic users could till a field many times faster than an average person with physical enhancements, or easily start a fire like Karina did yesterday. Without magic, you would be forced to use something like a flint. Also, a lot of development had gone into magic tools by powerful magic users, but development in other tools, ones that non-magic users could use, seemed to have been neglected. As a result, the divide would only continue to grow. It was the perfect downward spiral. It could be improved even a little through selling glassware to the royal, nobility, and wealthy. He wanted to offer products that helped the lives of non-magic users at a low price. Karina noticed that he dozed off, so she asked what was up. He said he just remembered something from his homeland. After they got the weapons, they went to get something to eat. After goblins were spotted near Takura village, the village asked the Adventurers Guild to handle them. 3 adventurer parties formally accepted the request and were dispatched, totaling 13 people. However, 7 more parties that didn't formally accept the request showed up too, bringing the total to just under 40. The exact number of goblins was never confirmed, but that was still too many people. On top of that, the adventurers who didn't formally accept the request were quite ill-mannered. The goblins gathering on their own were just hoping for some scraps, but as the horde grew larger, there may be elites among them. Daichi asked if the elite ones were tough, and Karina said it would get quite messy if goblin mages were using elemental magic, or goblin generals using non-elemental physical enhancements, or wearing enchanted gears. If that was what they were dealing with, even with that many people, it was doubtful they could handle it. At the very least, based on the movement and equipment of the adventurers she saw, they were E rank, or maybe D rank, adventurers at best. The rank of an adventurer begins at the apprentice level H rank. At the top lies S rank. At the AA rank, after being recognized by a high-ranking noble of at least a count, you're treated as equal to the status of a knight. S rank was awarded to those who had achieved feats worthy of being granted the title by the king, but S and AA were essentially prestige ranks. So other than those, there were only 6 basic ranks from A to G. Of course, combat strength didn't directly translate to rank. Rank was primarily based on achievements. Even so, it seemed adventurers with D rank and above had still endured their fair share of tough battles. Daichi wondered what Karina's rank was, and she said she was a C rank. Daichi figured that meant she was pretty reliable. She said she had a fair share of experience. As far as combat strength goes, Daichi considered himself pretty strong. He still hasn't used that weapon he ordered yet, though. Back to the adventurers. Since the scale of the goblin horde was unknown, it was hard to say there were too many people. Karina confirmed him. He asked if he was missing something because he would like to know if there was something he was unaware of. Alicia wanted to know too. If Daichi knew the whole story, she was sure he wouldn't do anything reckless. When she finished her sentence, Nike meowed to her, which she said she agreed with her too. Excited, she approached Daichi's face and waited for him to confirm her. Daichi decided to give Nike to her to distract her. Karina told Daichi that 2 months ago, a village about 4 days from here was completely wiped out by bandits. The whole village being wiped off the map wasn't particularly peaceful. Goblins would frequently show up around that village too. The village requested the Adventurers Guild to deal with them, but when they arrived, the village had already been destroyed. A large number of adventurers were sent to that village, and yet they all went back without wiping out the goblins. If the goblins near a village were dealt with, the lord of the region was responsible for paying half the reward. But if the village chief goes missing, and the adventurers don't complete the quest, it is classed as a failure. When a lord's request was deemed a failure, not only would the adventurers have to pay a penalty, but it would also hurt their reputation. If it were Karina, she would expand her search area and just take out a respectable number of goblins. Daichi asked if the adventurers and bandits could be conspiring with each other. Karina said it could be. This means that this village was probably next, so they might have to deal with bandits too. Daichi was thinking about showing the gun in his item box if that happened. He asked if they could follow him for a second, saying he wanted to test out something. They seemed confused, so he said he wanted to try out a weapon from his homeland and hear what Karina thinks about its power and ease of use. They need to go somewhere no one else can see though. She thought that it might be a little too careless. Daichi mentioned they both killed 5 king apes. He asked if a goblin general using physical enhancements was stronger than a king ape. Karina responded that the goblin general was stronger. Alicia suggested going to the grasslands. There weren't many obstacles in the way, so if anything happens, they could use physical enhancement and easily get away. Apparently Alicia could use physical enhancement too, a little. Karina decided that the edge of the forest should be okay, but not staying out of sight completely. As long as they could still see the convoy and the guards, she would allow it. Daichi started walking, but he bumped into someone. The man started telling him. He was too close to his face, but after handling the king apes with Karina, he wasn't scared at all right now. Daichi told him that he was the one who ran into him. The man's party started surrounding them while the man was still yelling. Daichi noticed that people were looking at them. They thought he was speechless. They noticed that he had a beauty in each arm and wanted him to share with them. Karina warned them that if they got any closer as a bodyguard, she would not overlook it. Daichi turned to Karina and asked which one was stronger, these 5 men or 1 king ape. Karina and Alicia were shocked because there was no way he was trying to compare them. They didn't seem to care about Karina's warning and asked what he was planning to have a go to them. They wanted to take it somewhere more private if they were going to do this, and promised to make sure to take good care of him. That scene was like straight out of a manga. But it was pretty irritating for them to be saying that to the girls. He decided to test out that weapon from his homeland on those guys. He asked Karina if there were any issues if they turned the tables on those guys, and she said it would be better if they didn't kill them. But there was no problem in messing them up pretty badly. Either way, they started it first. They heard their conversation and seemed pretty mad. Karina told Daichi that if he did manage to kill them somehow, he would have to pay the lord a hefty fine. Brushing off murder with money like it was nothing was very scary, actually. He was going to try not to kill them, but mess them up a little. That should scare off the others too. These guys were adventurers, so they would be ready for them. When they took out their swords, Karina reminded them that she had warned them. Daichi once again asked if there was no problem if he seriously injured them, and she confirmed to him. Daichi had made up his mind now. He told them that they weren't planning to take their lives, but they should get ready for a real beating. They didn't seem scared at all, though. Daichi said he was going to deal with those two and told Alicia to get behind him. He had an idea with this cheat skill he had gained. He could order anything from the modern world by trading, freely store anything except living things in a pocket dimension. Enhancing his body greatly increases his physical abilities and the performance of his equipment. So by combining these abilities, he used the gun without holding it in his hand and shot the man in the leg. The man was shocked because his feet were cut off. Daichi moved to the other, and Karina didn't stop watching him. She cut the tendons in all of their dominant arms. Karina told them that if they had learned their lesson, they were not going to come near her clients again. They were so scared and begged her to spare them. Karina told him to tell his friends too. The village people seemed pretty shocked that Daichi and Karina won. Nike seemed to wake up now. She was sleeping so peacefully, but they made so much noise. Alicia felt bad because they woke her up, so she told the adventurers to apologize to Nike. They all seemed shocked, but she ordered them to apologize to the kitty. Karina seemed pretty confused too, but when Alicia asked if she didn't feel bad for Nike too, she turned to the adventurers and ordered them to apologize. They immediately listened to her and apologized to Nike, even begging for forgiveness. Nike seemed pleased, so Alicia told them to be thankful for Nike's kindness. The cat's charm was terrifying. After the adventurers left, they continued their way, and Karina asked how he blew their foot off. That was a little too far. Daichi said she cut their tendons. Karina responded that cut tendons would heal right away with some simple water magic. But healing a foot back could only be done with high-level water magic. It would cost a small fortune to get that treated in the royal capital. Daichi figured that healing could be done with water magic and Nike should be able to handle some injuries. He said it would take a while for them to recover, just as planned. Karina told him that instead of fighting them head-on, others may just try to ambush them now. And she asked if he thought they could find an inn that allowed people to lodge there when they looked like they were about to be ambushed. Daichi was shocked that they would have to stay in the tents and apologize to her for his actions. Karina forgave him and asked what he had done to blow their feet off. Daichi was playing dumb, so she told him to cut it out and said he blew the guy's foot. Daichi stated that that was a skill only he could use, a unique skill. He asked if there weren't people with unique skills around here. Alicia said there were, but only a few. He said it was the same where he was from. Karina told him that only a single person on this continent had a unique skill, so it wasn't that few. Daichi told them that he was chased out of his homeland because of his unique skill. Since he was the only one with a unique skill in his country, his family ended up going after his life. So he said he would rather not talk about it and asked if it was okay. They seemed to feel pretty bad about asking, and this made Daichi feel even worse because everything he was saying was a lie. So he said he would share as much as he could since they were still kind of curious. They said it was okay and he didn't have to push himself. He asked them to keep it a secret between the three of them and showed his unique skill. There was a bullet in his hand. He said he made those clumps of lead and iron and shot them really fast with the power of fire. Karina was shocked that he took out that guy's leg just by this clump of lead. He said that this bullet was propelled by an explosion, sending it at high speeds to unleash a destructive force like what she saw earlier. The bigger the bullet, the more the damage. Karina didn't even want to imagine how it would be with the bigger one. He mentioned that he asked if they would like to see his experiment, and said that after showing them his unique skill, he wanted to ask them how useful they thought it was in combat. Karina wasn't sure if they really needed any more. He said it was an experiment, so he wanted to try some more things. He suggested a snack break after his experiments. He had gotten sweet and salty snacks and asked Karina which ones she would like. She said she would like sweet ones. He said it was settled, and they were going to talk about their thoughts during their snack break. Karina was immediately okay with this idea. Her weakness was definitely sweets. They went as far as they could, but the space wasn't really open. They didn't know what kind of monsters were lurking deep in the forest, so they could not go any further. Daichi asked Alicia to hand on to Nike while he experimented. Nike knew Alicia was obsessed with her, and he was glad she was taking advantage of it. He felt there was a good understanding between Nike and him. While playing, Alicia told Nike to stop it because she was trying to get into her clothes. Karina told Daichi to get a move on. He panicked, thinking she felt his perverted thoughts, and said he would start with the one he used to punish the bandits. It was Desert Eagle, the pistol that took off that guy's foot, capable of firing the most powerful bullet currently available. By opening the pocket dimension in the palm of his hand and pulling the trigger of the Desert Eagle with his mind, he shot the tree in front of him. Karina and Alicia were shocked. They found it amazing. Alicia didn't come across such powerful magic very often. Karina asked if he could use it repeatedly. He wondered if it was hard to use offensive magic repeatedly this fast. Karina explained that it was not the hard part. C and D rank mages could attack multiple targets at once, and even E rank mages could repeatedly cast spells without losing out on power. But the speed of that bullet, she could barely follow it with her eyes. There was a similarly powerful spell in earth magic, but it didn't even come close in speed. Even so, for a mage, it was like carrying a pistol all the time. So even a low-ranking mage poses quite a threat to regular people. Karina told him that for people who couldn't use magic, just the fact that someone could use offensive magic was enough of a threat, ranked or not. So, between a regular person with offensive magic and an adventurer who couldn't use magic, Daichi wondered who would be stronger. Karina responded that it was the offensive magic user. He asked if they didn't call offensive magic users mages. Alicia explained that you would only call those registered with the Mage Guild with an F rank or above a mage. He asked if it was a different ranking than the adventurer ranking Karina talked about, and the answer was obvious. Daichi suggested explaining the differences between adventurer and mage rankings while they had some snacks. Karina thought the experiments were over, but they just came to the main course. He told them to watch carefully and use the bigger gun this time. He needed some aim training because at this point, Nike's water bullets were more powerful and accurate. Alicia said there were skilled high-ranking mages that could use such power-focused magic, but not like that .so, Nike's water magic was more powerful than that of a high-ranking mage skilled in offensive magic. He asked, wondering if only a high-ranking mage could have cast a spell that had enough power to shoot through this large tree. Kurian said it wasn't impossible to bring down that tree by using explosive fire magic or some boulder-launching earth magic, but shooting through it would be pretty difficult. Alicia said she had 3 earth magic users, and 1 spirit earth magic user in mind, and 1 more if they ignore the accuracy. Compared to magic that would show up in Isekai'd manga, Nike's water bullet wouldn't be too impressive, but in this world it was on par with high-ranking mages' offensive magic. Karina was actually relieved. She said she thought he was going to shoot through that tree next. Daichi decided that Nike's spirit magic would be his trump card. He wanted to take a snack break. While eating, Daichi wanted to ask them something. He said he was thinking of trying to set up a shop in this village. For Karina, it was a scary idea, but for Alicia, it was interesting. She wondered what kind of wonderful tools he would show them this time. Daichi asked if they would like to see them first. He wanted to hear their thoughts before he consulted guild leader Klaus. Since Alicia was so well versed in magic tools, he thought he would ask her. He showed them some matches and asked if they had tools like these here too. Alicia had never seen anything like this and couldn't even imagine what they were used for. He said they were fire starters and waterproof matches and showed how they were used. Alicia certainly didn't sense any magic. Daichi explained that it was neither magic nor a magic tool. Even non-magic users could use them. Fire starters were just something used to make starting fires easier, taking into account how well they burn. Even a waterproof match was enough to get a decent fire going. Alicia asked if those matches alone could easily take the place of a fire-starting magic tool, and Daichi confirmed her. He said he knew that a wealthy guy like him who wanted to do business with poor people in mind came off as kind of fake and hypocritical. He was just thinking of ways to split the business he did with the rich and the not-so-rich, keeping it separate. Karina told him that she didn't see it that way, so he didn't need to explain it that much. Alicia said if it were cheap, it would fly right off the shelves. She wondered if the supply would be able to keep up with demand. If not, then his credibility might take a beating. He said he had plenty of stock in the meantime, so there was no problem there. Karina realized that his item box must be absolutely massive. He said he could also manufacture them if needed. He said it wasn't difficult for him. That comes after his talk with the guild leader Klaus. Personally, he was willing to go out on a limb to convince him. Karina said she wouldn't butt in any further. While they were eating their second course of the day, Daichi mentioned when she said she could use 3 types of elemental magic other than non-elemental magic. She said it was fire, water, and wind. He asked about Alicia and she said she could use all elements. That was pretty incredible. Karina asked him to keep this fact a secret. Daichi promised and decided that it was best not to dig any further. Since they were mages, they were part of the Mages Guild, and he wondered if it would be rude of him to ask their ranks. Karina said it wasn't rude and responded that they were both B-rank mages. It may not mean much to him, but she said she was a promising mage. He was surprised because she wasn't really dressed like a typical mage, and she mainly used her sword during the fight against the king apes. She explained that the main reason she was a B rank was due to her non-elemental wind magic, so she could use stronger enchanted gear than when she fought the king apes. She said she did as much as she could in that situation. Enchanting gear and physical enhancements both needed times to strengthen, and it wasn't a luxury she had. And as far as scouting enemies with wind magic, it would have been a waste. Meanwhile, Alicia aimed more towards a magic toolsmith. She said she had an aptitude for enhancement magic. It was a magic that enchants materials with elemental magic. It was a kind of magic that imbues affinity magic into materials that have a high compatibility. For example, for a fire-starting tool, you would find materials with high fire affinity and enchant them with fire elemental magic. By using those enchanted materials to craft a tool, you could make it usable to those without fire magic, so long as they had some sort of magic ability. Daichi thought that if she enchanted a tool with all 4 elements, she would be able to use all 4 elements, but it wasn't that easy. Alicia explained that there were limits to it. A fire-starting tool usually produces as much fire as needed. Skilled top-tier magic toolsmiths could even create tools with adjustable fire intensity, but that made them very expensive. They also had additional safety features to help avoid accidents, which add to the price. For instance, if you were trying to light a stove and accidentally shoot out a fireball, it wouldn't be good. Daichi asked if it was something they were born with. Karina responded that it wasn't just enchantment magic that they were born with. All magic was like that. He thought about giving up on crafting magic tools. However, enemy scouting with wind magic seemed to surpass even modern technology in some ways, so he would really like to have it. But he didn't know how to create it, or how it worked. Nike's powers seemed more and more useful. She could mainly play a scouting role and use her water magic as her trump card. Showing Nike how Karina did her scouting would come in very handy, so he asked Karina to show him how she scours with wind magic. Karina was puzzled because he wouldn't be able to see the wind magic. He still asked if she could show him. She was confused but didn't reject him. While she was doing the scouting, Nike was watching her very carefully. She suddenly informed them that something was nearby. Based on its size and movement, it could be human. Daichi panicked because it could be the bandits. He asked how many there were, and Alicia said there were 8 people. Karina thanked her because she couldn't detect their number. Alicia apologized for stepping in suddenly. Alicia's wind magic seemed better than Karina's. It seemed that she wasn't just the delicate young lady that she appeared to be, and Karina didn't want him or anyone else to know about this. Now that he thought about it, not only Karina, but guild leader Klaus and Captain Jeffrey also seemed to be hiding information about Alicia. He decided that now wasn't the time to think about that. He wondered if it was the adventurers' party because there were too few bandits. Karina said she was going to keep them just inside her scouting range for now and see how it goes. Objectively speaking, Daichi had realized his combat ability was fairly high in this world, but he wasn't good with rough stuff yet. It was only natural to put his ability into practice though. Against 8 people, even if they were bandits, Karina and he should be able to drive them back while protecting Alicia. Daichi asked if they should try getting closer, but Karina said it was dangerous. Besides, they shouldn't move recklessly. They didn't know what skills or magic they had. Nike was giving a strong reaction, so he started to believe that they were bandits. In that case, if they were here to overrun the village, then no merch would be shown. As they continued walking, Karina said it was bad. Their numbers increased, and now they are 20. That was quite a lot. If it's bandits, then their hideout was probably close by. It would be ideal if they could pinpoint its location. Alicia said she could do it, but Karina told her that once they got back, they were going to report to the guild leader and Captain Jeffrey. In the next scene, Klaus thanked Karina for bringing this to his attention. He told his butler to pass this along to Jeffrey. Klaus wanted them to excuse him to pour them some tea. Daichi asked if they could discuss a different matter while they wait for Captain Jeffrey. Klaus said there was no problem and asked what it was. Daichi showed him the matches and explained that they were one-time use, and not only that, but they also only last for a short time. He said he could throw them out after one use. He said he was planning to sell those at a low price for people without magic. Klaus asked how low he was talking. He said he was going to sell them for 2 silver coins. That was about 2,000 yen. The waterproof matches he purchased only cost a few hundred yen. This wasn't charity. He was doing this as a merchant. Klaus asked how much he was selling the fire starters for, and he said 1 silver coin for a box of 60. Klaus was shocked because he was making them cheaper than he waterproofed matches. Daichi explained that fire starters were just made of flammable material which burn easily. They were basically just freebies thrown in with the matches. Klaus told Karina to try igniting the fire started with that. Daichi saw that they could light a fire easily without matches too. He thought about focusing on selling the fire starters instead. Klaus told him that he should raise the price on the fire starters and asked for his opinion, but he immediately said no. He said that he was going to keep it at 1 silver coin. They didn't try to challenge him, as expected. From guild leader Klaus's behavior, it was clear that he held tremendous value for him. He had to tread carefully or they would figure out he was a gold mine. He felt kind of bad for taking advantage of him, but he was going to have his way on this one. Klaus responded that he had no question. As for the products for the nobility and the wealthy, he was thinking of selling them to him, including some he hadn't shown him yet. Klaus gladly accepted them. Before he could tell him about the other products, Captain Jeffrey came. Daichi said they would discuss those at another time, after things settled down. Klaus asked them to start from the beginning, telling them about what happened in the forest and what was going on in the village. Captain Jeffrey said they could be hunters or adventurers. But considering the raid on the Torino and the increase in robberies on roads near the woods, the possibility that they were bandits was rather high. Given the situation, it was safe to assume the guys that Karina found were bandits. Captain Jeffrey asked how they should proceed and if they should divide their men and search the forest. Daichi hoped that they weren't planning to defeat the bandits with a handful of merchants and some guards. Karina said Lord Asakara achieved quite a feat during last night's battle with the king apes. He also possessed magic other than the non-elemental kind with force on par with a high-ranking mage. Miss Alicia also had enough ability to avoid danger. Klaus asked about his combat ability. She said he had the most powerful fire magic out of the merchants here, and he could physically enhance himself well enough to run away. Alicia said she could use her ranged magic if push comes to shove. Klaus told her that it wouldn't be necessary. She thought she could distract them a bit, but they immediately told her that she didn't need to do that and that she must leave the combat to the guards. Daichi figured that Alicia might be of noble status based on how people react to her. Klaus said avoiding combat as much as they could and returning safely was of utmost importance. He said Jeffrey would be alert to intercept at any time and Karina would form the search team. He left the recruitment to them. They left Klaus's tent and Karina said she was going to lead the search team. She was going to get 2 escorts, 1 for each of them. But Daichi's non-elemental magic skill would be revealed. Daichi didn't see any reason to hide it, so he said he would leave the escorts to her. Karina thanked him and asked him not to show them the full extent of his magic and skills. She turned to him and stated that he was too trusting. It would be best if he could disguise his unique skill somehow. It was already kind of disguised, but he said he would think of a way while they searched. If heavy firearms were off the table, then it was either bows or melee weapons. He was going to try to order a Japanese sword. Karina called for Dennis and Frida, saying she had got a job for both of them. They asked what had gotten her in such a hurry. She said that she noticed a suspicious group of about 20 people in the woods, and she asked them to come check it out with them. 20 people didn't seem that worthwhile for them. Frida said it was unlike Dennis to be worried about whether it was worthwhile or not. Dennis told her that he would rather make some money while having some fun. From their conversations, Daichi figured that they were skilled. Karina said she would brief them on the way. They asked about her guests, and she said Daichi, and she would form the vanguard, and Miss Alicia the midguard, and Frida and Dennis the rearguard. While walking, Frida stopped Daichi and asked if he was a merchant. He heard his combat was up to par. He said he was embarrassed to talk about it, but last night's scuffle with the King Apes was only his second time ever in battle. Dennis said taking down King Apes in his second battle was proof of his talent. Daichi asked him to drop the mister. The formality just felt weird to him. Dennis heard he was heading to Karam and asked if he was planning to set up a shop there. He said that Karam was his destination at the moment, but he hasn't decided where to settle down yet. He said Karam was a good place to set up his first shop. It was densely populated and a key point on the trade route connecting the capital and the port. Daichi thanked him for the information. He said he would have to wait until he got to Karam. He was expecting him to be selling some rare foreign treasures in Takura. Daichi said he thought he would set up a little stall here after exploring around a little, just to see how well his products would be received. Curious, he asked what kind of stuff he was going to sell. He said they were fire-starting tools. He thought he was talking about the lighters, but Daichi corrected him that it was the waterproof matches. They were shocked that he could do that without using magic. Karina told them that they were approaching the area where she sensed the initial 8 people. They had better move with caution from here on out. Dennis lay down on the ground and started picking his nose, saying he was ready for action all the time. Suddenly, Nike woke up and detected them from the right side. She sensed something with her spirit and wind magic, so he should be cautious. Alicia pointed to the right, saying there were 3 people roughly 5 kilometers that way. They were close to them. Daichi took out his binoculars and started looking to see if he could see them. Dennis asked what he was doing, so he explained that they were binoculars and he could see things far away with them. He gave him to try out and he was amazed. Daichi approached Karina and informed her that he saw something glowing over there. He said he could see things far away with those binoculars that Dennis was trying right now, and he just happened to look over there and see it. Nike was the one who sensed it, but he couldn't tell her that. Karina used her wind magic and stated that there was a group moving less than 2 kilometers from here. From such a distance, they couldn't make out any details though. Daichi took out his shield and Karina made fun of him because it was too big. Alicia said his sturdy-looking shield was quite wonderful, and it gave off such an impressive, menacing look. They hid, and Alicia started drawing them a map. There was a cave about 2 kilometers from here. There was a group of something in that cave, which could be demi-humans or half-humans. But there was actually more than 50, maybe even 60. Either way, there was definitely trouble in that cave. If there were loads of them in that cave up to no good, surely that would be their hideout. Frida said it was a bit too early to say for sure, but Dennis was probably right. That was enough information to work with, so they could retreat for now. Daichi commented on how cautious Karina was. Frida and Dennis looked at each other and started making speculations about the half-humans. Dennis said that the best they could do was to take as much detailed information back to base as possible, and the worst they could do was go Mia. Finding where their hideout was and their rough numbers was itself worthy of praise. So worthy they may even get a special reward. Dennis asked if he knew what kind of clients a guard liked. Daichi said no, and he responded that they liked obedient ones. Daichi thanked him and said he would keep that in mind. Now that Daichi had a change of heart, Karina told everyone to retreat. They continued their way, but Daichi dropped something in the forest without them noticing. But when they returned, there was no tent. Karina explained that they were moving into the village. All this had the villagers wondering what was happening. Daichi asked if the plans wouldn't be exposed if the bandits had someone hiding within the village. Since their goal wasn't to take out the bandits, if they made them think they were on guard and were reasonably formidable, then the battle was already won. They had sent a messenger to notify the Knights Guild. Their job now was to stay in the village, wait for the knights to arrive, and keep the enemy in check. The only problem now was there were actually more enemies than they anticipated. Even if they asked the villagers to help them, Fredia wasn't sure how much of the intel they would share with them they would believe. Either way, Karina told them that they still needed to make their report. Daichi asked if they were staying out here for the night after all, and Karina said there wasn't much they could do about it. In the end, they canceled their plans to stay inside the village in case of a bandit attack. Instead, they were staying in a field near the entrance to the village. The reason was simple: to avoid spreading their forces too thin and to take a more active defensive position. It was also easier to convince the villagers to help this way too. Dennis asked Karina what the village chief said, and she said they were going to cooperate. Fredia said the village already had a sizable punitive force. Whatever their reason, it was good that they had their cooperation. Dennis said if they had said they weren't cooperating with them, then he would have suggested they hightailed it out of here. Karina told Frida and Dennis to take it easy for the night and return to their posts. Karina was going to take Daichi and Miss Alicia out to the main road. They joked about how she used Daichi's first name instead of his last name. Karina panicked and said they had got the wrong idea, and he preferred that way. But Dennis remembered that she was formal during the search. Frida said she must have been nervous or she was trying to hide it from them. Dennis asked about Daichi's opinions, and he said he was a bit surprised by Karina's attitude during the search and assumed she was nervous. He was not letting them get him that easily. Karina was freaking out now, so Daichi said he was going to set up his stall and they would come check it out if they wanted. They continued teasing her as Daichi dragged her out of here. They were about 2 hours. Daichi wanted to see how the villagers would respond to his stall today. Karina didn't see many people walking around, so it might not get too hectic. Alicia asked Karina if something had happened, and she panicked. She said nothing happened at all, but Alicia could sense it. She said it wasn't important and told Daichi to set up the stall. Daichi approached a stall and greeted the lady there. She asked him if he was setting up right now. He said he was just testing the water today. The woman noticed that he had an item box and was jealous. She said she became more jealous of those with an item box as she got older. Daichi asked how they usually start fires. She said they use flint. She said she could use a little bit of magic, but magic tools were so expensive. Daichi said there was a tool that could start fires easily without magic and was affordable. He asked for their hands and showed them how to use the matches. Everyone was shocked by the item he showed. With that, the path to becoming a merchant had finally begun. In the next scene, Daiichi announced that he had more free samples of waterproof matches available and instructed everyone to form a line. With no pushing, everyone was interested in his product and wanted to try it. They were shocked to see that it lit up even without using magic. His products have gotten the villagers all riled up. He said that those fire starters make it easy for the firewood to catch fire. Even though he explained pretty clearly, he didn't think they understood what he was saying. He borrowed it from someone and showed them how to start the fire with the fire starter. Everyone was shocked. He said that even people without magic could start fires with those waterproof matches, and with those fire starters they could easily have their firewood catch fire, even with a small flame. However, there was a catch. They were both one-time uses. There were 25 waterproof matches in a box, and one box was worth 2 silver coins and 60 fire starters. Each box was 1 silver. Their reaction was the same as leader Klaus. The first customer came and wanted to take both matches and the fire starters. When the man gave him the money, he asked if he could check something else if he had time. The customer asked if he still had more products. He said it wasn't a product, but he had gotten some freebies. Since he had made a purchase, he would throw in those for free. It was a little earlier than he had planned, but he decided to prepare a few bonuses. He took out a grilling thing and put some chicken on top of the fire. They asked if that was food. He explained that it was grilled chicken. He cut the chicken into small pieces, skewered them, added some sauce, and grilled them. Their mouths were watering because they had never seen grilled chicken like this before. Daiichi heard that the poor and those working jobs other than manual labor typically only eat 2 meals a day in the morning and evening. As expected, this had made the people who skipped lunch start drooling. When he finished cooking, he asked the girl who just bought the matches and the fire starters to take one of them as a freebie. The girl thanked him and tasted the chicken. She was absolutely amazed by how good it tasted. She had never tasted anything like it and asked how he made that sauce. Her reaction increased the others' interest in Daiichi. They asked if they could get one if they bought some products and if he was selling the chicken too. He said he still had plenty of chicken left and that they didn't have to buy everything as a set. So long as they purchased one time, he would still throw in the grilled chicken. Everyone gone crazy over the chicken and bought so many. But before that, Daiichi went to the old lady who let him set up a shop next to her and thanked her for her kindness. He even apologized for disturbing her business. The lady said it was no disturbance and she was already closing up for the day. He asked her to take the chickens as thanks. After that, he returned to his stall and started working. He was absolutely exhausted from working all day, so he told the customers that the shop would close soon and they could make their final purchases now. While he was working, a bunch of bad-looking men appeared, asking him to give them a taste. That was just what Daiichi had been waiting for. They asked him to let them have some of that chicken. He said he sold more than he expected, but it looked like he was all out of grilled chicken. But they didn't believe him, because they saw him take it out of his magic bag. He said the shop was closed for the day, and he was planning on opening up again here tomorrow, so they could come back if they were interested. They said that they were customers here, and they would teach him a lesson in business if he kept treating his customers like that. Karina got in the middle of them to protect Daiichi. One of them told her that this was none of her business and that she should watch herself. But the other one knew that she was a B-rank mage. Karina showed them her rank tags to confirm, but the man didn't back down and told her to step aside if she had no business here. She told them that she was guarding him. The others were scared, but the one talking was still not intimidated by her. He thought there was no way she could take the 4 of them on. Karina smirked and told him that if he misjudged when to back down, he was going to seriously regret it. The men behind him immediately backed down and said there was nothing they could do if it was sold out. Another man named Alan appeared and asked if they were fighting over something. He asked if they needed a hand, and the man said yes. He then turned to Karina and said she was going to have to pay the price now. Karina was confused as to what price he was talking about. Daiichi said since it seemed she was satisfied that he was out of stock, they could take their leave now. They got mad and asked if he thought he was funny. He said they were misunderstood and that he was actually poking fun at them. That was the last straw for them and they all got ready to beat them. Alicia and Nike were cheering for Karina. That Alan guy asked what the problem was. The man said they were making a fool out of them, so he was thinking they could teach them a lesson on how the world worked. Alan asked why he hadn't started teaching them yet, and questioned if he was scared of some little brat and his girlfriend. They all started laughing at him, but he said she was a B-ranked mage. Alan said they better be careful, but she was not the only mage here, so he was confident. Karina informed Daiichi that the 2 approaching them and the one in the back were probably mages and told him to be careful. There was no problem if they just had a certain level of physical enhancement, but if they had gotten enchanted gear, then 9mm bullets might not work. Karina asked if he could take it on the side. This was the first time Karina was relying on him, so he was riled up. He said he could take both of them, but just one was enough, and she asked him not to make the first move. In the next scene, we see the bandits on the floor, heavily beaten up and on their knees. Karina asked what she said earlier. The bold one said he forgot and asked the others if they remembered, but they said no. Daiichi had something he wanted to ask them. He asked if they came here to get rid of the goblins. He said they were all adventurers registered in the town of Karam. His party and he formally accepted the request, but apparently those mages over there didn't. Daichi asked how many goblins they took out and he said they were all cleared out. Daichi asked for the exact number and he said his party got 0. The other party had 0 kill too. But those guts said they got 11. Daichi asked if he was sure, and when he said yes, he asked him to tell him about his party members. Since he was silent, he asked the others if there was anyone who could tell them about this party. Karina noticed one and asked him to speak. He said he had 4 people in his party, and one of them could use water and healing magic, the 2 in front were wearing enchanted gear, and the last guy used offensive magic, but that was all. They were well balanced. It wasn't surprising that they managed to kill 11 goblins while others couldn't even get a single one. Not surprising, but still suspicious. He then asked who here got the request to clear goblins in Terreno village. The man who gave them the information said his party and the mage's party. He asked if the village wasn't attacked because he made it out without a scratch. He said that after they arrived they couldn't find any goblins for more than 10 days, so they just left. Then the mage's party reached the village, 3 days before the goblins attacked. It was lucky that a couple of days later they would have been attacked by the goblins. He then turned to the ones who fought the goblins, and asked what sort of scale the operation was. They said that right after they got to the village they went into the forest to scout for the goblins' den. They heard the other parties didn't find any goblins for more than 10 days and they thought the goblin horde might have been moving around, so they searched deeper into the forest. Daichi asked if any goblins had shown up during their search and he said no. They got everything they needed. Daichi asked Karina what they should do with them. She said it was a hassle to turn them into the village watch, and if they feel remorseful they could just let them go. Hearing this, they all started acting. Karina just wanted to deliver this information to guild leader Klaus and Captain Jeffrey. On his way, Daichi was still thinking about what he learned. It wasn't strange at all for a party with 4 mages to search deep in the forest for goblins, but something in him was telling him not to trust them. There was something about how talkative he was too. They went and reported to leader Klaus that the 2 parties that were at Torino village until right before the bandits attacked also participated in clearing the goblins. Leader Klaus asked how Karina felt about this. She responded that the party of 4 mages definitely cannot be trusted and they shouldn't be too trusting of the other parties that were there either. That is, they may be talking from a script. She judged that they should be cautious. Leader Klaus was also interested in the fact that the person who got this information out of them was Lord Asakura. She said that this might even be the reason why he opened a stall. It may very well be connected to the situation in Terreno. Klaus was planning to send a scout to the taverns and get information tonight, but he beat him to it. Karina apologized for not stopping him. He said that no one would guess he would open a stall just to probe out the adventurers. He asked if the adventurers noticed. She said that the line of questioning not only suggested they were on guard for any bandits attacking the village, but also that they were on guard for any attacks on the road. Karina said they would be fine as long as they didn't read too much into it. Lord Klaus then asked what she was thinking about Lord Asakura. She said that his potential seemed limitless. Not only his abilities as a mage, but his knowledge and wisdom were incomparable too. Klaus was of no doubt that he possessed a level of education far beyond which he was able to fathom. He did calculations in his head without pen and paper, and the calculations were very fast and accurate. Klaus Algo got that impression. Even as a merchant, he could immediately piece out puzzling calculations and tedious contracts. When he was practicing his magic in the forest, he started off by writing out some equation-like things and calculating some distances. Klaus asked if she remembered what the equations were, but she didn't. She couldn't even make sense of them, much less remember what they were at all. The method that Daichi used was triangulation. Since he only took rough measurements, the answer he got was just an estimate. Nonetheless, in the eyes of Karina, he was like a professor giving a lecture. After a while, taking measurements became tedious, so he pulled out a strangle tool and started measuring with it. Klaus assumed he was royal from another continent, or from the bloodline of high nobility. Karina wasn't sure why, but he seemed more like the heir or the second son of a wealthy landowning noble. Klaus wondered what her reasoning was for that. He said he took everything lightly. She had seen him rush into situations without properly considering whether he could handle them himself. And rather than solving things on his own, the people around him have to pick up the pieces. It seemed like Asakura was just setting the stage to flaunt his own ability. Furthermore, she believed they should elevate the way they treated him. Klaus asked what they were going to elevate to, and she said as if he were royalty traveling incognito or at least some sort of heir. Klaus asked for her reasoning. She responded that even in their country, only the highest class possesses non-elemental magic and an item box. The item box alone, every single product within it, was astonishing. And also, as he likely had a high level of knowledge and sophistication, he had proved to be able to leverage his surroundings and situations to solve problems. If all of those things were carelessly spread throughout their country, it would not end well. And finally, if he were indeed royalty from another nation that possesses more advanced magical capabilities than theirs, the extent of influence he could gain would be immeasurable. Klaus asked if she would want to win him over no matter what it takes as the daughter of the royalist Count Kirsha family. Karina was shocked and increased her voice, asking what he meant by that. He said he was just joking, but the current state of the Noondorf kingdom was hardly a matter to laugh at. Klaus changed the topic and said that the economic impact of his products and information alone would have both opposing camps in their country after him. There was no doubt that whichever camp gets a hold of him would obtain great influence, but a greater concern would be if another country gets hold of him first. This concluded that they would treat him with the highest honor. In the next scene, Daichi saw Dennis and Frida and asked why they were tagging along again. She asked if she wasn't good enough for him. He said he was just wondering. She told him that it was better to hang around with people he was familiar with. But if he was not happy with Dennis, she said she would chase him off and call someone prettier over in his place. Dennis started to get annoyed. She said that she was sure Asakura preferred someone prettier than a middle-aged man. He said he was fine with him. Frida told Dennis that he had gotten Asakura and his cat's permission to drink with his head held high. Karina told them that the plan was to ambush the bandits by pretending to be drunk, so they had to take it easy. Karina then told Asakura that Dennis and Frida were both B-rank mages and they both excel in both close-quarter and ranged combat. He thought they were on par with Karina's abilities, but Karina specialized in wind magic. If they specialized in offensive-oriented fire magic, they would be better at offensive magic. He couldn't help but compliment them. Frida said Beltram's guards were all above D-rank mage, so they didn't feel all that special. It was hard for him to notice that the guards for the Beltram company weren't particularly strong. Dennis responded that they gave off the impression of just his average convoy, but when push comes to shove, Dennis could use his reliable AoE magic, and they could all run away while the enemy was distracted. So he just helped them run away. When they arrived at the bar, they finished their conversation. Nike seemed a bit uneasy about the place. Asakura wondered if she could catch wind of those punks in there with spirit magic. Asakura said the shady guys from last time were drinking in the tavern. Karna didn't know that Nike could sense them. She said that if it were those adventurers, that would be a relief. They entered the bar and Karina immediately found them. Alicia said Nike was so smart. Asakura noticed that their injuries were still healing. They had that water mage, so he should have been able to completely heal their injuries in a few minutes. Her injuries shouldn't even take 3 minutes to heal. And they were planning to pretend to drink until they showed up, so there was no need for that anymore. Dennis seemed upset that he wouldn't be able to drink. Frida suggested he buy some and wait outside. They waited until they left the bar and noticed that they were leaving the village. Daichi asked if they were going into the woods. She said that if they were just meeting with a contact, they shouldn't need to go into the woods. They would likely just meet their contact near the outskirts of the forest, or just send information with letters or something. Daichi said they would tell them the Beltram escort party was tougher than they thought. She didn't know if they would say they were tough, but they would definitely say they had gotten more combat ability than they planned for. They continued searching with wind magic, and Alicia said some guys were lurking in the grass. Karina hoped they could pick up what they were saying. Alicia led them to where they were and said the situation wasn't good. From what they were saying, it seemed they overheard the village watch situation. They were here to deal with goblins, so it was natural they would make contact with the village watch. The village watch had always gotten its guard down. Daichi asked how strong the ones who came for the goblins were. Dennis responded that goblins become a problem if they group up, but as long as there weren't any elites, a group of low-ranking adventurers could manage them, and it was customary to investigate while defeating them at the same time. It was just as Daichi thought. This could be a tougher enemy than some goblins. If there were an unusual number of goblins, a large force would be dispatched to deal with them. In other words, there weren't enough goblins to warrant a large number of adventurers and village watch members, keeping the village's guard low. This was starting to seem like a similar situation to Torino. First, lure a couple of goblins near the village. This would put the villagers on edge and they would request adventurers. Some of the bandits sneak into the adventurers' parties and they cause the joint, relaying information to the main crew. Finally, the bandits sack the village if the situation looks good. Alicia said they were advising them not to attack the entire village but to avoid the Beltram company and target the other side of the village. So they were attacking the other side of the village, which was a surprising turn of events. Karina asked if they hadn't figured out it was an ambush and she said they were just acting cautious. She asked if she could let her hear what they were saying and Alicia tried. Suddenly, Daichi started to hear their conversation very clearly. They were talking about Beltram Company's convoy stopping in the village. Daichi was shocked that she could use her wind magic to let them hear the bandits' conversation. One of the bandits asked why the Beltram Company even stopped over at the village. Alvin was there and said they were spooked by the attack on Toreno. It was the last village they did, the one where they slaughtered them all. They said they were going to have a real problem here if the Beltram Company didn't move on. But they said that Beltram's lot being here actually worked out well for them, especially if the guild leader was there too. This would turn out to be an even bigger score than last time. They seemed to like what he was saying, but Alvin reminded them that the security was tough. He only fought 2 of them, but both of them were pretty tough. But the leader didn't seem to be afraid because he said one was a B-rank mage and they had gotten 5 B-rank mages. Karina and the others were nervous now because that might be a problem for them. In the next scene they returned and Karina went to report those punks from earlier. Alicia asked Daichi if he could tell her where he was from, all the innovative technology and the groundbreaking inventions. Daichi didn't know if he should talk about that stuff, and the most he could say was surface-level stuff anyway. He didn't know enough about the technology. He needed something to distract Alicia from this question. He said he would tell some stuff to her and said that in his country right now cats were super popular. Alicia didn't seem so interested because they were popular over here too. He said that where he was from, 1 in 10 people owned a cat, and there were stores just for admiring cats, and when someone hung up a picture of a cat, the news spread thousands of miles. And also, there was an assortment of goods for cats and loads of cat-shaped household items too. Now she was interested. She got the idea of goods for cats but was confused as to what he meant by cat-shaped household items. He took out some of them from his item box to show her how cute they were, and it worked. He had cat plates, cat cushions, and a cat-shaped portable charger. She didn't even know what a charger was, but still, it was so cute. She said that it was expected of Mr. Daiichi's homeland. She was an aspiring magic toolsmith, and even she would never have thought of that. He said that it was okay because just copying it wasn't going to lead to new ideas. His country may have won in terms of inventions and technology, but no one cared about that, and she should have owned it with her head high, and focus on fully enjoying the cuteness of cats. Alicia asked him to teach her to open a new door. Daiichi realized that this distraction thing was getting a little out of hand. Daiichi's training was fierce. He showed her paws that make everything super squishy. Next up were the cat products. He showed a cat house and put Nike inside to show how it worked. And he even put her in a little costume. He then showed her a high-tech cat. Alicia wanted to see more, so Daiichi crossed the line and put her in a cat costume. At that moment she came to her senses and was so embarrassed. Daiichi said it was okay and even asked her to meow. She was embarrassed so much but still did it. It kept going until Karina came and stopped him. Back to the present, Daiichi could feel the tension in the air. He figured out why they were so confident. Alan told the other bandits that it would be best to hold off until they got out of here. The leader asked if he was scared, and he didn't lie. He said that the lady was pretty tough too, but at least he knew what she was doing. But that brat used some magic he couldn't have even imagined. He shot a clump of lead into his leg. The leader thought it was earth magic. He said that even then he still managed to pierce his enchanted gear. Those with that much power were few and far between. The others agreed, saying that Akim and Elmer both said their legs were blown off too. It was definitely that brat. Dennis noticed that the ones who infiltrated the village were low-ranking. They then told the others to contact the guys in the cave. He would give them the final decision tomorrow at noon and told them to cross their fingers that it was cancelled. The bandits returned to their cave and informed the others that Alan's group got their asses handed to them. He was completely freaked out by that brat and that guard lady. One of them asked if he was sure they were B-ranked mages. He said only the girl was B-rank, but he wasn't sure if that brat was stronger than the B-rank mage. A person from Alan's group stated that he was far more dangerous. They asked the boss what they were going to do. They could be with the Beltram company, and that would be a real problem for them. They had more numbers, so most of them thought they could handle them, but they had got a Brank mage, and that was something not to be overlooked. As they were about to start an argument, the boss told them to shut up. A girl sitting behind the men said she didn't think the Beltram company was going to ignore the fact that the village watch was on the move. The boss asked if he was saying they may have already set a trap. He said that the guild leader's convoy was there, and if the rumors about his sense of justice were true, he would work with the village guard and set some kind of trap. They said the village watch was focusing its attention on the north gate, and the Beltram company's encampment was in a clearing near the south gate. If they attacked the village watch from the north, the Beltram convoy should come running to back them up. If that were the case, then they might just take as much as they could before they show up. They could take out the village watch and grab the stuff in that time frame. But they wouldn't earn as much, and they didn't like the idea of having to worry about the Beltram company. This village had more chicks, so they would rather take their time and turn the tables on them as usual. But the boss knew this was impossible. Normally it would still take time for them to reach them, even if they rushed. But if the village watch devoted itself to guarding the residents and calling reinforcements ahead of time, and they might set a trap, it was more than likely that they made some kind of preparation, allowing them to confront them in a very short time. They could have set up units at some halfway point, and that would have allowed them to defend any direction they came from. Even if they annihilate the village watch, there was no way those guys could fight off the company while plundering like mad. They said they should attack the company sooner rather than later. They would take it in one go. Not just the men and women from the village, but the cargo from the convoy too. That would be quite a haul. But the man who talked with Alan said there was no way they were winning against the Beltram convoy and reminded them how tough they were rumored to be. Peter said a B-rank mage would be quite a hassle. The boss asked what he was thinking. She put aside how spooked Alan's group was. As Yosef said, they all knew about the Beltram convoy's reputation, so he suggested avoiding direct confrontation with them to minimize their losses. However, that being said, if they were to proceed, a surprise attack was the way to go. The boss asked how they were going to do it. He said that the north side was guarded by the village watch, but they should be able to defeat them easily. But that was only if they came at them head on. If they decide to bunk down, it would take too long to beat them. But the others said they would just attack the village if they did that. Then they would rush to defend the villagers and they would take them out there. They kept assuming they would act in their favor though. Peter told them that the village watch wasn't stupid. If they were careful at all, they would keep the villagers somewhere safe, even just for the night, like near the center of the village. One of them thought they were going to deal with the convoy camped in the village center after they crushed the village watch and called them idiots for dividing their forces like that. Peter confirmed that he was an idiot. He said that the village watch would devote itself to defense. That would buy time for the Beltram convoy to reinforce the villagers in the village center, and there were other risks too. They suggested ignoring them, taking all the valuables from the empty houses and just booking it before the convoy shows up. And they said he was afraid that some idiots would be engrossed in pillaging, that they wouldn't get away in time, and they said no one was that stupid. But Peter wouldn't be thinking about that if there weren't people that stupid. They said that it was easy, they would just plan it so there would be no trace of them when they showed up. Peter asked what would happen if they didn't just evacuate but took all their valuables and food too. He said they would attack the convoy from the south, then Peter told him that if they went from the south, then they would end up facing them head on, and a battle like that would be tougher than the village watch. He said they wouldn't face them head on, they would make a surprise attack. Peter suddenly changed his expression and said they had the same idea. From now on they would be assuming there would be a unit protecting the south and one protecting the center of the village. The plan was very simple. They would attack the north gate, joining forces with the group on the inside to attack the village watch. Their true goal would be to crush the village watch and destroy the morale of the villagers. Without a will to fight, they would only have to deal with the Beltram convoy. They take out the unit while they are confused, before the knights show up. Once they take out the Beltram unit, the villagers would be easy pickings. They said that the real treasures were where the main convoy was. The boss said the main goal of their attack was to annihilate the village watch, and this was the fake plan that Peter intentionally leaked. He had a real plan and everyone seemed interested in it. Meanwhile, after taking into account those punks that came to clear goblins and the bandits who attacked Torino village, they had a meeting with the Takara town hall. Two things were on the agenda. First, to discuss their findings and plan their defense of the village before the knights arrive. And second, about future information gathering. Daiichi had been told that all their plans might as well be handed to their enemies on a satin pillow if the village council took the lead on the operation. During the meeting, they ironed out the details of the plans. Currently, the village watch and the adventurers who came to clear goblins were defending the north gate. The Beltram company was stationed near the south gate, attentively keeping watch. These positions would remain as they were. This way they could deal with the bandits no matter where they attacked from. The main force of the company would stay near the village center. This allows the main force to not only support both north and south gates but also respond to attacks by climbing over the outer walls. Also, to minimize damage done by the bandits, villagers living near the south gate would be temporarily relocated near the village center. That was the Beltram company's suggestion. Any suspicious adventurers would help defend the north side with the village watch to keep an eye on them. Dennis told Daiichi not to worry since they would be leading the operation, they would be facing the brunt of it. He had a point. Frida said the village council hadn't come up with an alternative plan, so they would have to go on their own. Since it was their plan, they had to put their forces on the front lines. The village cannot do it alone. She was pretty blunt with it. Now that they were done, Dennis said they should go meet with the guild leader. After telling him the plan, he told them to proceed as planned. Here's the plan. Daiichi, Alicia, Karina along with Dennis and Frida would prepare for an attack in the south with guild leader Klaus. The unit requiring the most mobility would be stationed in the village center and would be led by Captain Jeffrey. The counterattack would be ready soon. Daiichi didn't know how tough their magic enchantments would be, so he must consider the possibility that a Desert Eagle wouldn't be enough. He thought about anti-material rifles, but he didn't know who the B-rank mages were, and it wouldn't be feasible to just assume they were all B-rank and start blasting. He could start clearing them with an assault rifle and pick off the ones left over with an anti-material rifle. Magic enchantments were not subject to light, sound, or air, so he could use sedating gas. Nike started meowing, so he asked what was up. He seemed to want to play with that again. While he was playing, his listening device started working, and he heard the bandits saying their target was the Beltram company. Daiichi apologized to Nike because they had to play later. He heard them saying that targeting the village watch wasn't their true goal, their real target was the Beltram convoy. Peter said they were going to attack the village at any time, but Beltram's convoy splitting up its forces like that was something that rarely happens. This chance was 1 in a million. So they were going to steal Beltram's cargo, but they should also capture the guild leader too. Peter and Yosef both knew what he looked like. He would have that fake plan they talked about delivered to the village watch. They asked why they wouldn't just send reinforcements to the village watch from the start, without sending troops to the village center. The others responded that they weren't that good-natured. At most, they would increase the number of troops in the village center. Peter was sure they would put their main force in the center and keep their most reliable troops close by. The troops near the guild leader would no doubt excel in both judgment and solo combat. Yosef said the convoys got some tough players, but Peter said they could handle this with the boss. It had been a while since they had a serious opponent, so they told them not to let their guard down. Yosef wouldn't mind turning him into ash first. They were all sure that they could win against just 5 guys. They were different from those guys because they were active-duty military. Peter reminded them to throw those guys in too, just to be safe. But some of them didn't want to use their trump card and risk getting injured. The boss decided and told them to tell Alan's squad that they would be attacking the north entrance tomorrow at midnight, and pretend to contact the intruders with a secret letter of their fake plan. Tomorrow night they were going to attack the Beltram Company. Meanwhile, Daiichi was listening to them. Karina came to his tent and said Captain Jeffrey had received information on the attack, and they were going to the guild leader's tent at once. He said he understood and that he would get ready. At Leader Klaus's tent, Klaus told them that the bandits would attack tonight. Some suspicious adventurers were captured by a patrol squad, and they had a letter addressed to the infiltrators. According to this, they had figured out that they were putting a unit at the village center. It seemed their true goal was to wipe out the village watch. The bandits were going full force on the north side of the village to quickly destroy the village watch. Their target would be them. It seemed they had decided to be unwise to take on both themselves and the village watch at the same time, so they were trying to pick them off one by one. Frida said it wasn't a very bandit-like strategy. It was more like a plan knights or military with organization skills would come up with. Dennis asked what they were here to discuss. Klaus punched the table in front of him and told them that they were not going to let them get away with this. He had already ordered the mobile unit to join forces with the village watch, and they were going to head to the north side and turn the tables on the bandits. Dennis asked Leader Klaus what he was going to do, and he said he was going to remain here with the Merchants Guild. Karina wanted to remain here as his guard, but he said the guild had employees who could fight to a certain extent. Dennis told Klaus that if Karina stayed with him, they could go to assist the village watch without worry. There were 5 B-rank mages among the bandits, so leaving Karina out of that fight would only increase the damage they took. As he knew what their real plan was, Daiichi was nervous. He said that there was something he must tell him. Klaus asked if it was urgent, and he said it was. He said that they must not leave the south undefended. Klaus was shocked and asked if he hadn't heard their discussion just now. He took out the listening device and told him that everything he said had all been according to their plan. They heard from the device that they were going to leak the fake plan on purpose and trap the Beltram Company. Everyone was shocked. Daiichi turned off the device and told them that this was the real plan the bandits had come up with. Klaus asked what the hell that conversation was. He said that in the large forest south of the village, about 500 m to 1 kilometer from the main road, the bandits were heading this way. This was a conversation not long ago. Suddenly, a guard came and informed the guild leader that a battle had broken out near the north gate, and they had fired a signal flare. Klaus didn't know what to do. Daiichi said he had an idea. They were going to use their own plan against them. They could ambush the bandits halfway as they approached from the south, attacking them on both flanks. For this plan to succeed, they need to act as if they were moving according to their plans. Firstly, they made them think they were sending their remaining troops in the south to help the north. To do this, they would send the remaining guards, excluding the 4 of them, along with non-combatants disguised as them, towards the north gate. Secondly, they were going to make it known that the guild leader was in the town square, waiting to provide any emergency orders to the units. Basically, he would be the bait. Then 5 of them, Alicia, Dennis, Karina, Frida, and Daiichi, would sneak out of the village, move to the ambush point, and launch a surprise attack on the bandits. Even if the surprise attack fails, they would buy the guild leader enough time to escape the village center. Karina found it too risky. He said that the bandits were attacking and no plan was without risk. Karina told him that if their main force was coming from the south, they should call back the troops they sent to the north gate and have them help there then. But Dennis said it wouldn't work because they would be here long before they could call them back. Then they could intercept them in the village center. They would buy them enough time for the troops in the north to reach them. Even if the village watch stays put to the north, the forces of the Beltram Company could still easily fend off 60 bandits, even if they had 5 B-rank mages with them. Karina asked if she was right, and they said she was. But it wasn't just about fighting. Frida didn't think the guild leader would agree to this either. Daiichi said if they just let the bandits into the village center without a fight, they would just switch from kidnapping guild leader Klaus to taking hostages of any villagers who haven't evacuated yet. Karina was frozen. Klaus asked what their chances were against the bandits' main force. He said he had a secret weapon. Klaus asked if he really had something up his sleeve, some sort of tool or AoE magic, capable of annihilating 60 or more bandits and 5 B-rank mages in their midst too, and he nodded. He said he was going to render them all powerless and capture them alive. Karina grabbed Daiichi's shirt and told him that he was underestimating them too much and taking this far too lightly. Dennis dragged her out of Daiichi's neck and told him that hearing him say he could wipe out 60 bandits at once was hard to take at face value. But now he was saying he could incapacitate and capture them, which was even tougher to swallow. He was right. Klaus wanted proof and asked if he could explain how he was going to do it. Daiichi decided that showing them would be the easiest way, but that wasn't possible, so an explanation would have to do for now. Guild leader Klaus was strongly opposed to Alicia joining their squad, but in the end it was she who said that if she was to cast attack magic it would be better done outside of the village rather than inside, and he folded. Judging by everyone's reaction, Alicia's attack magic seemed to be AoE. Karina asked if he was sure this would be okay. He said that it might be a big ask to convince her fully just with that explanation, But if the guild leader decided it was getting too dangerous, then by all means, she could leave him behind and retreat. She also explained that in case the first part of the plan fails and he couldn't render them powerless, he would have to resort to mowing them down with an assault rifle. Alicia said she would stay behind with him and help with the mowing down, but Karina couldn't just retreat and leave the two of them behind. Daiichi told him that they cannot do the backup plan if she didn't leave him behind. Karina told him that until they needed the backup plan, she was sticking with them. If the backup plan fails too, then she will drag them out of there with a rope around their neck. Daiichi responded that she didn't have to worry about him. Dennis heard that he was pretty tough, but he shouldn't be overconfident. Frida agreed, saying that he shouldn't underestimate the enemy and he should take them more seriously. Karina admitted that his skills as a mage were impressive, but he didn't have much combat experience. She heard this again, the tale of a promising mage being done in by a weaker enemy because of their lack of experience, and the one thing all of those mages had in common was that they were too cocky. He said there was a saying where he was from about if they know the enemy and know themselves, they don't need to fear the result of 100 battles. But Karina didn't even know what that meant. He said that it meant if you had an accurate grasp of both your own and your enemy's strength, you wouldn't lose even if you fought 100 battles. Alicia commented that he was so cultured. Daiichi stated that knowing the enemy's plan was their greatest advantage. So their strategy uses their own plan against them, allowing them to capture them in one fell swoop. Karina got what he was trying to say, but he couldn't deny he was still being reckless. He said that it was true that he lacked experience, but he believed that he had a fair bit of knowledge. He believed that through consuming history books and dramas, both fiction and non-fiction, he had amassed a fair bit of knowledge about war tactics and strategy, more than the average university student. Besides, even if this was his first real fight against humans, he wasn't afraid. Being able to test his knowledge of warfare and weapons far outweighs any fear. There was nothing to worry about, no point being too afraid to do anything. Alicia used her wind magic and informed the others that they were 1 kilometer away. Karina told everyone to make it ready and asked Alicia to enchant her gear and cast physical enhancements. Daiichi had to wait for them to get in range. Alicia noticed something and told him to hold on. There were more than just 60 bandits. 6 king apes were approaching too. Daiichi asked where they were coming from and Karina expected him to use that weapon. If he recalled correctly, it was said that king apes were used as military forces. Alicia sensed 66 bandits, and 6 king apes seemed to be under their command. The situation wasn't good. That was more bandits than they expected. Not to mention the 6 king apes. Frida wanted to fall back. Alicia told them that they had picked up their speed. Considering their distance and speed, it wasn't likely that they would manage to retreat safely. He knew the difficulty of retreating in theory anyway. He said he would hold them off here and they could use that time to let Guildmaster Klaus know. There were a lot more than he expected, but that shouldn't stop him from using his plan. Karina scolded him for being ridiculous. He told Karina that if there were more enemies, he would just increase his power and no matter how many enemies showed up, it wouldn't affect his plan. Alicia said she would stay behind Daiichi. She couldn't use her magic inside the village, and besides, she could chase them down with physical enhancements. Karina was the one who was in charge here, so she was about to tell them to obey her orders, but Alicia told her that there were only 700 meters left until they arrived here. Dennis told her that they were too close for them to retreat now. Karina said they were going to face them head-on while Alicia and Daiichi provided support. In other words, she was trusting Daiichi. Alicia kept informing them of their distance, and after a while they were only 200 meters away from them. Daiichi started to panic because they were practically under their noses. With this, he wondered if he would have time to pull out the assault rifle if the plan to neutralize them failed. After 100 meters, they were in range. Daiichi's weapon was a stun grenade, a cylinder that releases a flash of light and a deafening sound. A non-ethical weapon that incapacitates enemies without dealing lethal damage, known to be used by the army of a certain country. With a blinding flash of light and a thunderous sound, it temporarily robs them of their vision and hearing. Just as he planned, it hit them right on time and they were all on the ground screaming for help. Frida and Dennis were pretty confused. Karina turned to Daiichi and questioned how the hell he was. Daiichi didn't answer her and said they should tie up the bandits. This may take a while. It was better to restrict their movement, so he decided to use a net. Suddenly, a king ape started coming at Daiichi, so Karina told him to retreat. However, the king's ape didn't attack them. It attacked the bandits. Alicia wanted to fall back, but he said he was fine. Karina, Frida, and Dennis were both fighting off the apes. Karina informed the others that the king ape had gotten enchanted gear on. They were unusually strong because of that. One was coming to Daiichi, and he coldly shot the ape. He was relieved that the anti-material rifle was enough to kill them. He said he would take out the rest of the king apes and started shooting them one by one. Karina was getting even more shocked. Only the bullet he shot into the mouth went through. The one he shot into the body didn't. He assumed the enchanted gear on their body was tougher than he thought. Alicia was shocked that he was shooting through the enchanted gear so easily. The fact that it would penetrate at point-blank range gets him fired up. But the excitement he felt earlier was gone. He had no aversions to taking the life of a monster. In this life-and-death situation, he could feel his calmness. There were only 2 left, so he told them to start tying up the bandits while he handled the king apes. He easily handled 2 of the apes, but then a surprise attack came at him out of nowhere. Everyone screamed for Daichi, and he fell on his knees after the attack. While he was on the floor, he noticed that the mage bandits were the ones who attacked him. This was bad and he could sense it. They didn't stop when he collapsed and attacked with fire again, but Alicia shielded him and dodged their attack. Karina told them to fall back. Alicia grabbed Daichi and started retreating. After taking him to a safer place, she said she was totally fine. Her enchanted here was quite strong. Daichi forgot to enchant his heart and didn't notice since he had been doing it subconsciously until now. He was pissed at his own carelessness. The battle unfolding in front of him was all his fault too. He tried to stand up and said they needed to help Karina and the others, but Alicia stopped him and said he needed his wounds treated first. He said he was fine and they need to do something about the bandits, but this time Alicia was mad. She yelled at him so much that he had to give up and lie down. She said that she needed to treat his injury first. However, when they looked at the injury, it was healed. He was confused at first, but then realized that it was actually Nike. His water magic healed him in an instant. Alicia thought Mr. Daichi could use water magic, and at such a high level too. He said he wasn't that good at it yet. He wanted to focus on getting the bandits under control now. It didn't look like their vision or hearing had returned to normal yet. They must be using magic to track their positions. As expected of B-rank mages, Daichi called for the others and apologized for that and promised to take care of the rest. Everyone was shocked, but he ran among them towards the bandits and grabbed one of them, twisting his arm and breaking it. They kept attacking him, but Daichi dodged all of their attacks and shot them one by one. While he was distracted by the other bandits, their boss appeared right behind him and used fire magic on him, but Nike and Daichi had already noticed him and defeated him too. After it was over, Karina asked how his wound was and he said it was no problem. She looked at his wound and saw that it was really healed. She asked Alicia if she was the one who healed him, but she said Mr. Daichi healed it all by himself. Daichi thought she would be relieved now, but she started scolding him because she was so worried. Dennis told her that it was enough with the bickering and they had to tie those bandits already. Frida knew there was so much they wanted to talk about, but they had to deal with those guys first. Daichi agreed with them and said they should do that before they started seeing and hearing again. Karina said they would have a long talk after that. Alicia told Daichi that she was upset with him. She was almost in tears and told him not to make her worried again. He apologized and promised never to do that again. Between quick glances at Karina, who was binding up the bandits 3 at a time, he profusely apologized to Alicia. No doubt he will be more careful next time. He was also upset that he acted recklessly. He didn't know the enemy at all and just got carried away and thought he did. He underestimated the B-ranked mages and made a fool of himself by forgetting to enchant his gear. His mind went completely blank the instant that Fireball grazed his side. Just the thought of it sends chills down his spine. But Dennis and Frida said it was crazy and they were amazed. He said he knew Daichi said he could immobilize the bandits, but he didn't think he could do it all at once. He couldn't captivate the king apes and he should have kept his cool even after the king apes started panicking. He got too carried away after realizing his attacks worked on the king apes. But instead, he went on a rampage and didn't see the fireball coming. He was planning on taking out both the king apes and the B-rank mages. He thought he had managed to incapacitate them all, but it was just too much for him to handle. But they said that he even took the leftover B-rank mages almost instantly. They were struggling to find an angle, yet he made a valiant comeback and got them under control. Daichi started to feel overwhelmed by the compliments. He wanted to crawl into the nearest hole. Dennis said if he were a girl he would fall for Daichi and asked Karine if she agreed. She stated that it was quite a feat, but he was a little too careless. Dennis said it was nothing but a scratch, but she was actually right, there was no excuse for how careless he was. She suddenly started yelling at him for keeping the fact that he could use such high-level water magic hidden until the last moment was a bit too much. Dennis reminded Karina that adventurers and mages had to keep their cards close to their chests in this country too. Daichi still apologized for not being able to tell them. Karina said they would be escorting the bandits to the South Village Square. Since they had only got 5 people to do so, they would not tolerate any resistance. She asked if there was any problem and the bandits said no. It would take 4 days for the knights to arrive and arrest the bandits. In the meantime, the village watch took the lead in interrogating the bandits. As expected, they made it look like there were an unusual number of goblins. As the bandits seemed to be organized, another theory was that they were part of a feudal lord's army or foreign soldiers disguised as bandits. However, no concrete evidence to support this could be found. It was, however, determined that several of the bandits and at least 5 of the B-rank mages came from other countries. According to the guild leader Klaus, if they were just the lackeys of some incompetent feudal lord, they would have caught on to them already, so it would make more sense that they were foreign soldiers. In other words, some of the bandits who were working under the B-rank mages were sent to disrupt security at the border. He thought this was a peaceful country, but the border areas seemed rather tense. At the carriage, Daichi woke up and said they should be staying at an inn tonight to get some good rest. Karina responded that the town of Karam was up ahead. Daichi wondered if it was a big town and she said it was the second largest town near the border. The largest settlement in the border area, the commercial city of Byron, was about 20 days east of Karam by horse. For new merchants just starting up, Karam was a reasonable choice due to its size and location. They were going to depart for the royal capital in 10 days, then set off on the 20-day journey to the capital. Guild leader Klaus only promised to take Daichi to Karam, but he invited him to go to the capital with the convoy. At the same time, Alicia invited him to stay with her in Karam. Karina asked if he had decided, and he said he was doing as he planned initially. He would set up his own shop in Karam. Alicia said that when she first met him, he said he wanted a town where he could trade with multiple countries. Karina remembered him saying something like that, and he indeed said that. Alicia said his dreams were coming true and they were rooting for him. He was going to be a street vendor for now. Karina wondered what sort of crazy products he was going to sell. He said he would focus on selling stuff she and guild leader Klaus would be okay with. That sounded suspicious, so Daichi asked if she didn't trust him. She was surprised that he thought they were trusting him in the first place. It was like she couldn't even take her eyes off of him, and Alicia agreed, saying he was like a small child. Daichi said a small child was a bit too much, and they said he was right because a small child was more well-behaved and wouldn't be as reckless as him. Daichi then asked Karina if she would like to help Alicia, and he set up shop and gave him some tips. She said she could do it only if he treated her to some tasty sweets. Alicia would like to have some treats too. When they arrived at Karam, Daichi was tired but ready. Meanwhile, at the guild, the receptionist girl started to smell a new customer. As planned, after staying in Karam for 10 days, the Beltram convoy set off for the royal capital. Dennis was getting emotional now that Daichi wasn't going with them. Frida shook Daichi's hand and wished him all the best in his work. He said that he would be selling in this town for the time being, but once he gained a little more confidence, he was thinking of opening a shop in the capital as well. Dennis tried to convince him that Perrin would be more interesting for a shop, but Frida warned him to try to put ideas in his head. The largest commercial city near the border, Perrin, controlled trade routes to 4 different countries and served as the second largest city in the kingdom of Neuendorf. It did seem more interesting than the capital, but that was still a long way off. Daichi then reached his hand to Karina and said that he was going to be a bit lonely for a while. Karina didn't shake his hand again and told him that if he did something careless and messed up, she wouldn't be here to save him, so she was a bit worried. That was harsh, but they both knew that it was true. Karina said that the battle with the bandits back then was the peak of his carelessness, and before that, those punks in the village, he was the one who provoked them himself. While she was listing things that he had done, he stopped her and said he would do better. He was trying to look cute by using Nike. Dennis told Karina to be nice to him at least now. She then told him to be careful. Daichi said he would be able to get through it if there was any trouble. Karina recognized his abilities, but he was still in unfamiliar territory. Daichi promised to show them how reliable he had become by the time he saw them next. If the products he left with Beltram sell well, they would pay him the remaining balance right away. Then they would send a caravan back here to restock, and he was sure Karina would be an escort for that convoy. This time Karina reached for her hand and said she would be expecting him to be able to take care of himself by then. They shook hands for the first time. Daichi was quite happy with that interaction. He then remembered that he put some cake in the bag and told her to eat it quickly because it would go bad if she left it too long. Karina was so excited to eat it. Dennis and Frida approached Daichi, expecting him to have something for them too, and he said he had given them some too. Dennis recalled that he was looking for things to sell to the general public before and suggested adding cakes to the list. They would fly off the shelves. Frida agreed, saying she wanted to be able to eat cake in the capital too. Even Karina found this a good idea. Daichi explained that cake goes bad pretty quickly, so it was tricky. If someone got sick from eating cake that had been sitting out too long, the bad reputation from it would be disastrous. If a noble got food poisoning, they would think it was an assassination attempt. That would be a nightmare to deal with. Karina had to agree with him on that. Dennis approached Karina and teased her by saying she had another reason to visit Daichi. Karina was offended and told him that they were departing. On her horse, she waved at him and said they would see him in 2 months. He bet she wouldn't even recognize him by then. Karina was looking forward to it, and so Daichi parted ways with Karina and the others. The Beltram company stayed in Karam for 10 days. During that time, while setting up his street stall, Karina and Alicia helped him find a place that could be both his shop and his house. He got a message from the Merchant Guild yesterday that the property they had their eyes on was ready for handover. Alicia had been off on her own doing something for the last several days. It had been a while since he had done the whole solo thing. Nike started meowing, so Daichi apologized and promised that he would make a cat tower at home just for her. The deposit from Beltram for his products was enough to cover the cost of the property, though most of it was an IOU. Also, since he got the bounty for capturing those bandits, he had enough money on hand to relax for several months. It was a world of difference from a month ago when he was just a jobless college graduate in the real world. The Isekai world was just the best for Daichi. He kept wandering in the streets until he found the Merchant Guild. Their support was as reliable as they come. He entered the guild and the receptionist girl Melissa greeted him. She was the sales representative for his storehouse combo. She said that the room on the 2nd floor was ready for him. But before they got to discussing the property, there were a few things she would like to confirm with him. Daichi wondered what those things might be. She said that in the lint forest near the south gate there were rumors of someone shooting off offensive magic for no apparent reason. She asked if he knew anything about this. It was Daichi's first time hearing about it. The lint forest was the closest forest to this town. It was mainly a hunting ground for novice and intermediate adventurers, but even regular people go around the shallow parts to gather wild plants and grass. He said that some people were just good at being a nuisance. Melissa said they received reliable information that he was spotted in the area at that time. Daichi was shocked. Melissa explained that it was a formal complaint. Daichi responded that he was practicing his offensive magic, but he was doing it deep in the forest where there were no civilians. Besides, he saw someone else there practicing magic too. He said that someone was using wind magic on a tree, and it was some girl. Melissa told him that if it were just some apprentice or low-level magician practicing a little, then she doubted anyone would even bat an eyelid. But the complaint this time was that someone was using magic that roared like thunder and knocked over giant trees. Daichi realized that they were talking about the M32 grenade launcher. Melissa assumed he knew a fair bit of attack magic that couldn't be classed as beginner now. She told him to be more careful from now on. Daichi was surprised and asked if that was all. She took out a sheet and said there was more. The second point was about selling monster materials and magic stones. He said he was okay with selling monsters' materials and magic stones. Melissa said he should sell them in small amounts. Daichi said he was already selling them in small amounts. She suddenly got mad and yelled at him. She told him to explain what he meant by a lot in his product listings. Daichi realized that they had a difference in opinion. Melissa told him that monster material and magic stones were sold in bulk through the Adventurers Guild to other guilds, including the Merchants Guild. There was no way a simple street vendor was allowed to sell such large quantities. Daichi responded that his street vending business ended yesterday, and he has his own store now. But even with his own store, selling large amounts of monster material and magic stones without going through the Adventurers Guild was prohibited. He said he didn't hear about this until now, but it was written in the agreement. He kind of skimmed over that one. Daichi asked how much a small amount was. Melissa couldn't believe that was where she had to start from. He said that he was from a different country. Melissa told him that they were talking about the leftovers from a non-adventurer's hunting trip, after removing their own or their family's portion, which was how small an amount. That was certainly a small amount, and that's why it was called like that. As for the third item, she asked when he finished registration with the Mages Guild. Daichi was confused because he said he didn't register. Melissa was about to have a whole breakdown in front of him. Daichi responded that he didn't think he could join any other guild if he had already joined the Merchants Guild. Melissa told him that there was no such rule. She begged him to ask her instead of making the call all by himself if there was anything he didn't know. Daichi promised to ask her before doing anything from now on so she could just stop crying. She seemed to have calmed down for a moment, but then she leaned her head on the table and told him about the Mages Guild. He said he would go right now, but she had to go with me. Daichi suggested going to the Mages Guild first before she handed over the property and patted her back to calm her down. While walking to the guild, Melissa told him that she understood that he was from a different country, so he didn't understand how things worked around here. But this was a little too irresponsible of him. He said he would reflect on it. She reminded him to ask someone if he didn't understand. The more she talked to him, the more she looked just like Karina, so Daichi was getting war flashbacks. He had to bow to her and begged her to accept his apologies. Melissa panicked and told him that he didn't have to go that far. Besides, since he was with the Beltram Company, she just assumed they taught him more than they actually did, and that was her mistake. She tried to stand him up while saying they would both reflect on their own mistakes and leave it at that. She then started dragging him to the guild. But suddenly, she dragged him to a corner and told him to be quiet for a second. When the coast looked clear, Daichi asked if something was there. She said that it was hard to walk with all those people staring at them. Daichi thought about it for a second and gave her candy from his country. She seemed quite excited but got mad when she couldn't fit it in her mouth. Daichi told her that she was supposed to lick it with her tongue and showed her how to do it. She was uneasy about it for a second but then tried it and loved how it tasted. Its flavors were so much more complex than any ordinary candy she had eaten. While eating, she asked how much he was selling this for, but he said they would just keep it between them. But she couldn't accept money or goods from customers. Daichi suggested being friends as a solution and gave her even more candies. He then asked her to move from now on. He noticed that she was even easier to trick than Karina. With her smile, it looked like he could still afford to make some more mistakes because he didn't learn a thing. While walking, Melissa asked if he had been going into Lint Forest by himself. He said he was, and Melissa responded that if he had gone with someone from the Beltram Company, they wouldn't have let him cause such a ruckus. He promised to go with someone next time. That being said, Alicia was busy, and he didn't know anyone else. There was no way he could ask Melissa either. Melissa said they were going to talk with the Mages Guild. He asked if there was someone who could go with him into the forest. She said that the Adventurers Guild often gets requests for escort services from people gathering materials from the forest. He thought it would be something like that. However, she said that most of those who would accept those requests were low-ranking. Since they were only foraging from the shallow areas, it was naturally a job for the low-ranking adventurers. Daichi was sure even low rankers could handle it. Melissa didn't worry about the low rankers a month ago either. He asked if there had been some unsettling activity in the forest during the past month. Melissa responded that there wasn't something particularly within the forest, but there indeed had been. Suddenly, they heard something coming from the street market. Daichi immediately rushed there while Melissa was still in shock. When they arrived at the market, they saw a crowd. He noticed that the old lady he knew was also there. She recognized him too. Melissa asked if he knew her, and he said her stall was next to his during the 4 days he had it set up there. They tried to understand what was going on between those people who seemed to have trouble. Daichi couldn't understand a thing from what they were saying, but now wasn't the time to ask. He told the old lady that he was taking a day off today. The lady said taking a break despite the good weather was hard for some. Daichi had a spark in his eyes and said he had made enough money not having to work the rest of the month. Melissa tried to shush him because he was literally screaming. The guys there assumed they had got a Mr. Big Shot moneybags over there. Now that their attention was on him, it was time to rile them up a bit more. He asked who they were and if they were new merchants. The lady told Daichi not to be ridiculous. She said that they showed up and demanded that they pay them protection money, but they were just a bunch of punks. Since she couldn't stop herself from saying that, Daichi's plan was ruined. The guys said she was a feisty old bag and that they were going to need to have a long talk with him now too. Daichi told them that he had some business after this, so he asked them to make it quick. Unlike them, he actually works for a living. They were shocked by his boldness. One of them told him to be quiet. He said how quickly it would be and whether he would get hurt or not. All depended on him. As he put a knife to his neck, Melissa couldn't help but scream. Daichi started grinning, saying it probably all depended on him. The guy asked what was so funny. Someone screamed at him to stay away from him. Daichi didn't want the villagers to get involved, so he grabbed the guy's shirt and punched him in the face. He then started beating the others one by one. When he had one more left, Melissa screamed at him to watch out because a man was being thrown at him. He saved himself and let the man crushed on the floor. The person who did that was Alicia. She said she knew that he was at the center of all this chaos. He said she had got it all wrong and that he was the victim here. But their conversation was interrupted by the villagers cheering for him. Daichi asked the guys if they would like to carry on with this nice long talk, but they seemed fine with what they had got for now. Daichi then asked them if they wanted those fine people to pay them protection money. They said they were totally fine and ran away. The old lady patted Daichi's back and said she didn't know how good a mage he was. The surprising thing was that Alicia started screaming, calling the old lady grandmother. She told her to stop putting herself in danger and that it was too risky. Daichi was shocked that Alicia was the old lady's granddaughter. Alicia was surprised he was trying to hit on her great-grandmother too though. Daichi was confused. Alicia asked if he was by himself and told him that he was doing more reckless stuff while he was on his own again. He said he was with someone from the Merchants Guild and started looking for Melissa. Melissa started running at him and apologized because the street market fell under the guild's jurisdiction, so she was dealing with the guild stuff. But it was all good now, and they could get out of here. Alicia's grandmother thanked Daichi and said she would come by later to thank him properly. He said there was no need to thank him, but if she didn't, that wouldn't sit right with her. Isekai'd whispered to Daichi that once she had made her mind up, he wouldn't be able to convince her otherwise. Daichi gave up and told her that he would see her later. Alicia then asked what he was doing now. Daichi responded that Melissa and he were heading to the Mages Guild. Daichi then found himself with both Alicia and Melissa. Melissa said that just like he saw back then, during the past month, more and more of these rough-looking adventurers had shown up and had been causing trouble. Alicia had noticed that as well. Daichi thought that was just how it was here. Melissa said there had been a huge number of refugees pouring in from neighboring countries, all claiming to be adventurers. It wasn't only low rankers too, the number of intermediate adventurers and people of unknown origin had increased too. So now if they request escorts from the Adventurers Guild, they are more likely to just get some shady guys. So if a strong enemy appeared, she said they would probably just abandon the client and run away. Their running away was one thing, but when they conspired with the bandits, or suddenly turned into the bandits, they had a huge problem on their hands. This story started to sound pretty familiar. If this sort of thing were actually happening, the Adventurers Guild's credibility would come into question. In turn, that would put the guild's whole survival in jeopardy. That would also mean it would be better for him to stick to his solo trips into the forest. Melissa told him that this was not the only problem they had. There were a lot of missing people, in particular missing children. They had 10 cases in the last 2 weeks. Those 10 or so cases were only the ones that had been made public. If they include kids from orphanages or the slums, that number would probably double. That was an unusual amount. Most kidnappings were of children, but the possibility of adults being kidnapped wasn't zero either. She told Daichi that he was a business partner of the Beltram Company, and he had enough money to open his shop at the drop of a hat. Not only that, but she also heard that he was a foreigner with no relatives to speak of here. Daichi said he was basically a sitting duck. He thought she was worried he might get kidnapped too. He tried to comfort her by saying how strong he was. Melissa said he was definitely tougher than she imagined, but he just managed to catch them off guard. If the tables were turned and he was caught off guard, they didn't think he would be able to show his abilities. Daiichi was fully aware of the dangers of going into the forest alone. He promised them that they could trust him and that he would be careful. He then wondered if he needed to go have a chat with the Mages Guild first to go into the forest. Melissa explained that joining the Mages Guild was different from joining the Adventurers Guild. He had to be introduced by a trusted mage, so the best thing to do was request a mage who had some free time to become his bodyguard. It was completely unlike the Adventurers Guild, which had taken on almost anyone willingly. When Alicia noticed that Daiichi was staring at her, she said she had quite a few things she needed to do. Daiichi didn't insist on her and asked Melissa if all mages needed to be registered with the Mages Guild. She said yes, and added that any unlicensed or underground mages were arrested on sight. Daiichi wondered who introduced him. It was Karina Kirsche who introduced Daiichi. Melissa said Karina was the daughter of the Count Kirsche family, and she herself, being a rank B mage, made her more than qualified to vouch for him. Daiichi was shocked that the gluttonous girl was actually the daughter of a count. She had plenty of backing, so given the circumstances, Melissa was sure they would be accommodating his request for a guard. They arrived at the guild, and it was actually smaller than Daiichi imagined. Melissa said the Merchants Guild was more appearance-focused, but the Mages Guild was more focused on practicality. Daiichi wondered what she meant, but she wanted him to see for himself. They went to the reception, and Melissa said he was here to register with the Mages Guild. Melissa asked Daiichi for a letter of recommendation, but Daiichi had no idea what she wanted him to do. Alicia whispered to him, saying it was the sealed envelope she gave him back then. Daiichi forgot about it because he just threw it in his item box. He gave him the letter, and the man was shocked because Karina was the one who recommended him. Daiichi was satisfied with the result. Melissa added the official letter of introduction, but it was from the guild leader of the Beltram Company. The man was even more shocked now. She gave him 3 more letters from Dennis, Frida, and Alicia. The man asked Melissa to approach him and asked who that man was. Melissa glanced at Daiichi and told the man that his guess was as good as hers, in which case he asked him to fill in the required information on this form and then wait there. They helped Daiichi to fill out the form, and when he came back, the man was so excited that he was about to fall. He apologized for taking up so much of their time. Nike showed up, and he was surprised because he had never seen this breed before. Daiichi thought he found Nike adorable, but he asked if he was sure it wasn't some sort of monster. But Daiichi said she was just a kitty, but he kind of saw her float right now. Daiichi acted like he was being silly. Melissa whispered to the man that it had been traveling with not only the Beltram Company but several B-rank mages too. If it were some sort of monster, they would have noticed. He didn't insist on the Nike thing again and then took a look at his application. He was surprised by how empty the form was and asked if that was all. Daiichi said he was under the impression he didn't need to fill out anything inconvenience. He said this would be enough and thanked the man. Once again, the receptionist asked Melissa and asked if that was not at all a bit strange. He left his nationality and place of birth blank. Even travelers write down their place of birth. Melissa said it might be because it was inconvenient to write down and told him to just ask the man himself. He responded that he was recommended by the Beltram Company and Count Kirsch's household, so there was no way he could ask him that. Melissa assumed there should be no issue with registering him then and told him to stop bugging him with every little thing. The man gave up and said he would proceed with the registration like this. When the registration was over, Daiichi asked if he could arrange the transfer of the store to him. The man seemed surprised, so he thought they weren't actually finished. He wanted to at least witness Daiichi's magic. Daiichi asked what he was supposed to show him. He guided him to the courtyard since he only used non-elemental magic. He asked if the girls could come along, and the man didn't mind. Melissa was sure this would be a nightmare, and that's why she was so eager to see. The courtyard was a lot more spacious than the guild. He understood what Melissa meant when she said practicality. She also seemed quite amazed, so Daiichi assumed it was her first time too. She had heard stories about it, but it was her first time actually seeing it. Daiichi asked if they were going to confirm his magic here. The man said they should test the strength of his gear enhancement. After that, a test of his physical enhancement would be carried out in the form of a light spar. Daiichi noticed a man standing on the roof and asked if his opponent was a swordsman. He explained that he was actually a mage. He specializes in non-elemental magic, much like Daiichi. The man jumped on top of the roof and asked if he was the new registrant. His name was Alan. Daiichi mentioned that he didn't have any experience with swordsmanship at all, and his sword was just for show. Even though they call it a spar, the receptionist man said it was quite simple. They shook hands and introduced themselves. Daiichi said he was a complete newbie and asked him to go easy on him. Alan responded that there was no need to hold back, so he could come at him with everything he had. Alan was actually a mage who made it to B rank using only non-elemental magic. The receptionist man said he had prepared a longsword over there and asked him to take it. He was going to cut each of these pillars using gear enhancement. But there was nothing to be worried about. Even if he couldn't cut them, it didn't mean he automatically failed, so he could relax and go ahead. Melissa and Alicia both cheered for Daiichi. When Daiichi slashed the pillars, they were all surprised because he didn't look like a newbie. After he finished, he was also satisfied. Even after they arrived in Karam, he asked Karina and the guys to keep training him, and it obviously paid off. He turned to the guys and asked if that was okay for them. The guildmen seemed frozen. so he had to approach him and inform him that he had finished. The guildman asked what the hell that was. Daichi simply responded that he told him to cut them, so he did. He said that there was no way that was even possible. Daichi was confused because it would have been a bit boring if he had just cut them horizontally and diagonally, so he cut one vertically too. But the guildman wasn't talking about that. He asked why he was cutting the iron pillar with a wooden sword. Daichi said he was the one who told him to do it. Alicia and Melissa agreed with Daichi. He responded that this was not what he meant. He was only supposed to cut the wooden pillar with the wooden sword. He was supposed to cut the steel pillar with the bronze sword, then the iron pillar with the steel sword. He was supposed to use the designated sword for each one. In fact, he shouldn't be able to cut those. Daichi said he managed to cut them, so there wasn't much he could do here. He wasn't wrong. Daichi wanted to move to the sparring match, but Alan was shaking in fear and he was hiding from Daichi. He was literally crying. Daichi asked what they were going to do now. Alan screamed that his non-elemental magic was C rank. The B rank examiner was this much of a mess, but he only gets C rank. But if he starts at C rank and people underestimate him, then it wasn't bad at all. The guildman panicked and wanted to register him as a C rank right away. But he was unable to move because he went weak at the knees. He was no different than Alan over there. After the registration was finally over, Daichi finally got his C rank. Melissa told him not to lose that thing. He said that all said and done, it took a lot longer than he thought it would. He then heard Alicia's tummy growling, so he asked if they were hungry. Melissa suggested holding off on the property handover for now. Her friend had a shop open not too far from here. They decided to go get some lunch. Alicia, Melissa, and Daichi went to the place where Melissa mentioned and ate from every food stall they saw. Melissa was surprised that he wanted to try one of everything, but he said it was quite nice to eat on the go. Melissa then said that they had one last place to hit before they were done. He figured she was talking about her friend's place. Alicia asked if her friend runs a street stall too. She said she was a sister at the church and helped out at a stall run by the orphanage. They raise funds to keep the place going. When they arrived, Melissa was so happy to see Fiona, her friend. She seemed like a quiet girl. Daichi asked if she was the girl in the sister's habit and Melissa confirmed it. The kids there seemed to be happy to see Melissa. They said they only had the leftovers now, but she was fine with it. The kids noticed Daichi and asked if he was her boyfriend. They even teased Sister Fiona for losing out to Melissa. When they noticed Alicia behind Daichi, they assumed he was cheating on her. Melissa had had enough of them and said that he wasn't her boyfriend, and she wouldn't get strung along either. He was just a customer from the guild. Fiona bowed to them and apologized for the rude children. Alicia said it was fine because they were only kids. Melissa apologized to him too. They were the annoying little brats from the orphanage. She then introduced Daichi as a merchant and explained that he was a valued customer of the guild. She mentioned that Miss Alicia here was a B-rank mage. Melissa then introduced Fiona as her childhood friend. Fiona greeted them and Daichi offered his hand again to shake it, but she obviously didn't shake his hand. When she raised her head and looked him in the eye, Daichi was shocked by her beauty. He said he was going to buy everything she had left. The other stall owners didn't seem so surprised that Fiona stole another customer's heart. Suddenly, Melissa held Daichi's hand and told him that Fiona was incredibly shy. Daichi was annoyed that she meddled in his love affair. Melissa and Alicia decided that it was time to go now. While they dragged him, he asked if she didn't want to catch up for a bit longer with her childhood friend. She said she was careless, and she let her guard down. Because Fiona was incredibly adorable. Ever since she was younger, she had been constantly hit on by guys and had developed an intense fear of men. Now that he knew the whole story, she asked him not to grab her hands or anything like that. Daichi responded that this was all the more reason to go back. After terrifying her so much, he felt horrible leaving things like that, so they should go back and let him apologize. Melissa and Alicia decided to trust his words. Before they could return to Fiona's stall, they heard people making fun of the orphanage kids for running a business. Daichi noticed that they were in trouble, so he approached them. He said that he had seen more of his fair share of thugs recently and asked if they were really that common. Melissa responded that they had suddenly multiplied over the last few months. Apparently, the city has seen a massive influx of adventurers from neighboring towns and countries recently. Most of them being failed had been adventurers, unable to make ends meet. Not only did they have the petty hoodlum act down pretty well, but they were all super low rank too. In short, they were the kind of people this city didn't welcome. He observed their equipment and noticed that it was cheap and pretty badly maintained. Thanks to his connection with Klaus from the trading company, ever since he arrived in Karam, he had managed to browse tons of high-quality weapons which had sharpened his intuition for these things. Melissa told him not to let his guard down just because of the way they looked, because there were some mages mixed in there, along with some skilled adventurers. Apparently Melissa here thought he was some naive optimist who didn't know any better. It made sense now why she was so insistent on him having a guard to go anywhere. However, he had already learned the hard way what happens when he lets his guard down. He told Nike that if things go pear-shaped, he was counting on her. He had got the most reliable partner he could ask for, so he was pretty confident. The kids told the adventurers that they were already closed and asked them to go home. The adventurers got angrier and told him to watch how he talked to them. More and more kids kept going missing around here every day and they were threatening them with that fact. Fiona apologized for the children's rudeness and asked the adventurers to forgive them, and they could leave it at that. But they kept talking about selling the kids, especially the girls. The kids were so terrified that they all started crying. One of the adventurers grabbed Fiona's wrist while she was trying to calm the kids down and said he preferred her to the kids. Before Melissa could react, Daiichi grabbed his hand and twisted so badly that he couldn't move. The adventurer told him to let him go. While squeezing his hand, he apologized to Fiona for scaring her. Fiona started shaking and teared up. Seeing her face like that, Daiichi hyped up and twisted that man's arm so bad that it almost broke. The man begged him to stop, crying. He said he was pathetic. He was a tough guy when it came to women and children, but as soon as it was another man, he was bawling. The other adventurers told him that he was going to pay for this to put his hands on them. They even said they would call the guards on him. Daiichi was confused as to whether they really meant this. The adventurers were sure that he could not weasel his way out of this, and he was the one who started all this. Melissa told them that the one who stuck first was his man over there. As a member of staff from the Merchants Guild, she was a witness. The townsfolk joined and stated that the guy over there whose arm was being twisted was the one who put his hand on his sister first. The adventurers realized that the balls were on these guys and stated that they were going to remember every single one of their names and faces. He then approached Melissa and asked for her name and job at the Merchants Guild. She obviously didn't tell him her name, but they said they would get her name anyway as soon as the guards arrived. They then asked Daiichi to let go of him, but he said he was good and broke that guy's arm with ease. Daiichi figured that they had connections with the guards. That was pretty interesting for him. He asked the others if they really thought they would all still be in one piece by the time the guards get here. They seemed confused because Daiichi wasn't scared of the guards. Fiona asked him not to do anything reckless for the sake of the orphanage. She asked him to wait for the guards. The kids agreed with Fiona and asked him to listen to their sister. Melissa said they should wait for the guards too. She knew they were bragging about having connections, but she didn't think they could do anything bad. Daiichi turned to Alicia and all she had said was that she had got his back. It looked like he had certainly got everyone's undivided attention at least. The adventurers thought he was scared since he didn't say anything. Since the man got closer to him, Daiichi told him that he stinks. The adventurers were shocked, and the people started laughing at them. He said he had been wondering for a while now what that absolutely foul smell was and asked that man if he even washes himself. He then said that the stench was the cowardice to bully women and children, only to hide behind guards. Now all of them were furious and told him not to mess with them. But that was Daiichi's line. Daiichi took out the guns, and this time he used them from behind and only to push them closer to his head. The adventurers lost their balance, and their heads just bumped into Daiichi's. The people who saw this scene thought they had headbutted Daiichi and assumed he was in pain. Since it seemed like a fair game now, Daiichi acted like he was hurt. Their leader was confused because he told them not to put their hands on him yet. But it was too late, it was payback time. Daiichi punched everyone one by one and took them down. Now it was too late for them not to put their hands on him, so they attacked him. The people saw them draw his sword on the kid. Daiichi appeared on their back and kicked them down. He told the leader to watch his feet, and when he was distracted, he kicked him in the nuts. Now that they were all on the floor, the people cheered for Daiichi. They started to wonder who this amazing fighter was. Daiichi turned to Fiona and the kids and assumed he had them all worried there for a minute. He wanted to know what Alicia was going to say. She said she never doubted him for a minute. Finally, the guards came and told people to make way. Seeing the scene, they asked the adventurers if they were okay. The adventurers said he came at them out of nowhere. The guard approached Daiichi and told him that this was not going to end well for him. Fiona stepped up and told them that Daiichi helped them. She was trembling in fear, so she couldn't say anything more, but then the kids joined, saying Daiichi did nothing wrong and they were the bad guys. The townfolk agreed with the kids and mentioned that it was 5-on-1, but they still got what they deserved. The guards asked them to explain everything at the station. He then shouted at Fiona for no reason. Daiichi appeared behind him and told him that there was no need to shout at women and children. He was scaring them, so Daiichi told him to quit. He figured that these two guards were guilty as hell. He then said this was how they always end up taking their sides. No wonder they thought they could get away with it. Melissa stepped up and told the guards that there was a misunderstanding here. She said her name was Melissa and she was from the Commercial Guild. She was going to act as a witness to the whole thing. The fault lies entirely with those adventurers over there. She said that Daiichi merely defended himself. He was attacked after trying to stop his sister from being assaulted. The people promised to back them up and mentioned that they even talked about kidnapping those kids. A bearded man appeared and told them to stop. He told the guards to find them a mage who could heal them up. He then asked if there was anyone who could use water magic. He needed someone to provide emergency treatment until the healer arrived. Fiona raised her hand and said that she could use it a little. He asked if she could do anything for these guys. She said she could try helping them enough so that they weren't in danger of dying. He told her to feel free to ignore the injuries to the family jewels though, because he didn't care about those. He lastly approached Daiichi and introduced himself as their squad leader, Aaron. He said that they rushed over here after hearing there was a fight between adventurers, but he was confused as to what was going on here. He asked Daichi if he really did all of this to them himself. Melissa told Daichi to show him his ID. Daichi took out his ID, and Eren was shocked when he saw that. Shocked, he asked if he was really just a merchant, and Daichi confirmed it. Melissa scolded him for not pulling out the mage ID. Daichi was once again puzzled as to how things worked here. She said that they had literally been over this. The Mages Guild carries a whole different level of credibility. Hearing their conversation, Eren realized that he was the real deal. Melissa asked him to take a look at the issue date. Daichi only registered today, yet was immediately certified C rank. Everyone was shocked. This fact made Eren chuckle because if the adventurers went and picked a fight with a C rank mage like him, he wasn't surprised. Things turned out like this. If anything, they should be grateful they were alive. The guard said it was an unprovoked act of violence and there was no question about it. Eren told him that he was wrong. This was simply a fight. Regardless of the circumstances, a bunch of cocky adventurers tried to dish out a one-sided beatdown but got beaten at their own game. No matter how they look at it, those 5 over there look much stronger than Daichi. They were so convinced they would win that they simply looked down on him. Daichi was amazed by Eren's remarkably wise judgment. He wouldn't think there would be a man amongst the guards. On paper, he supposed it could be considered an excessive use of force, but with water magic being a thing here, it was pretty standard. Alicia was glad that they understood him. But that being said, they still need to get a statement from him. So Eren asked him to accompany him to the guard station. Melissa whispered to Daichi that their understanding tone might be turned on its head once they got to the station. Melissa mentioned that Daichi's patron within the commercial guild was the head of the Beltram Trading Company himself. Not only that, in the Mages Guild his patron was none other than Count Kirsha too. Daichi was shocked and just hoped that name-dropping like this wouldn't come back and bite them in the ass later on. He said that they wouldn't mind coming to the station, but he asked if they could be careful how they handle all of this. It was a pretty delicate situation after all. Eren asked what would happen if they handled it the wrong way. He looked at the adventurers on the floor and said that they might know the answer to that. So long as it's handled right, then there won't be any issues. He had also got a letter of introduction from the head of the Beltram Trading Company, addressed to the local lord, Count Donnelly. He supposed that would make him his employer. If he did see him in passing, he asked Eren to extend his apologies for causing this little commotion. The more he talked, the more Eren was curious to know who he was. Daichi mentioned one more thing. They were just about to have a nice long lunch, and after that he needed to pick up the keys for his new property. They also need to stop by both the orphanage and the church. Once that was all done, by all means they could head over to the guard station. He assumed none of that should be a problem. Eren responded that it was okay, and they would keep those adventurers detained until after his interview had concluded. Daichi had one more request. Until after he finished giving his statement, he asked them to hold off on interviewing the sister from the orphanage. She had been pretty cooperative, so this was the least they could do. The situation seemed to have settled for now, but the kidnapping those jerks let slip about. After seeing their connections with the guards and wandering around, he decided that he needed to do a bit of investigating. He noticed Fiona trying to calm the kids down and approached them. He brought a lot of food and told them that he had picked up way too much and couldn't finish it all. He asked if they could help him and they were so happy. The kids seemed to be in a better mood after eating all that delicious food. After that, they went to the property Melissa mentioned. The building itself looked pretty sturdy. The previous owner was pretty eccentric. Apparently his main goal when he had it built was to make it as sturdy as possible. Daichi asked if there was something wrong with the place. Melissa changed the subject and asked where Alicia went. He said she had something to take care of and headed home. Looking inside the house, he confirmed that it ticked all the boxes for the place he needed. Even if there were a few things he was suspicious about, he didn't want to let this one go. Melissa mentioned that it was only built 3 years ago, but it had been vacant for the last 12 months. So the guy only liked her for 2 years. He asked what happened to the previous owner. Melissa clattered and found a paper. She said that he was in his 30s and the 5th son of the Viscount's family. He was headhunted by the university in the capital, becoming a researcher and instructor. He was currently an associate professor in the Department of Pharmacology. Since it was property belonging to a Viscount's family, the best materials were used by the most skilled craftsmen to make it incredibly sturdy. Daichi noticed that the workshop next door seemed to be pretty sturdy too. She explained that it was because his next-door neighbor was the best magic tool craftsman in the whole city. Daichi was interested now. His skills allowed him to procure modern products and various other goods that were normally available in this fantasy world too. However, he couldn't create new products himself. Magic tools were just not something that was within his field of expertise. It wouldn't hurt to become acquainted with a craftsman of magic tools. Now that he thought about it, Alicia was planning on becoming a magic tool craftsman too. He would have to ask her about it next time he saw her. Melissa asked what he was thinking. Considering it was only an apothecary, it was still pretty spacious. For what he needed it for, it was the perfect size for him. Daichi agreed with what she said. He approached a door and asked if that was the workshop. She confirmed him, and they entered the shop. It was too dark, so Daichi took out his lighter. Melissa was shocked by that product and asked if he was going to be stocking this product. He said he should probably sell ones that weren't quite so bright and asked if there were no magic tools for lightning left behind. She responded that the previous owner probably either took them to the capital with him or sold them before he left. She doubted anyone would leave behind something so valuable as magic tools. Daichi asked if he was able to request that the guild take care of renovations, and she said yes. They arrived in the warehouse. It was a little on the cramped side. This warehouse was way more than he would ever need. Melissa assumed he didn't need a workshop, so he would use that for storage. He corrected her that he was thinking of turning the workshop into the actual storefront. She didn't think that would be an issue for them to make happen, but if that was the case, that means he was still going to need more storage space. Daichi explained that he had an item box, so he didn't need a warehouse at all. She seemed surprised at first, but then said she understood it. Daichi then wanted to look at the second floor. They went to the second floor and the view from the balcony was amazing. Daichi looked around and noticed Alicia right next to the house. They both seemed surprised to see each other. An old lady came and said some strange character was looking to buy the house next door, but she didn't think it would be Daichi. This was the old lady from before. The Grammy asked if he was going to buy it. He said they were going to do a couple of small renovations. The dust and noise might disturb her for a while, so he appreciated them bearing with it. With that, it was official that Daichi and Alicia would be neighbors.